I'm going to start streaming.
All right.
Yep,
So
and well, I don't know. Oh, there it goes. So
holy shit! I forgot to turn off my notifications right there. Holy shit! So you're live on your end, right?
yeah, yeah.
All
So
right.
I don't know what it's taking a little longer than usual.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a delay from when I click the button because usually it's
Yeah.
right away. Anyway,
Yeah. All right. I am live with Humane Mind. We're going to be discussing credibility, more specifically when it comes to news, and the media in general. Actually,
yeah,
um, it has become increasingly it's become a prevalent issue in the last few years. You know, especially if you look at the statistics of, back in like even the 70s, like the confidence in the media was pretty high, and now you look at how it is now, and it's in the
yeah.
toilet.
Well, the question that I have when it comes to that is, was confidence in the media so high back then because there was actually journalistic integrity back then, or was it just because the internet has made information so readily available we can call people on their BS the instant they make it? So I don't know how far back this trend actually goes, but I do know people are waking up to it. People are starting to realize, wait, no, that's not true. That can't be true because we've got hey, click on the link, you can watch the full video.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people have access to that instead of just being spoon fed what media wants you to see, so people can call them out right away. And that's why I think more people are leaning towards the, hey, wait a minute, they're lying to us. um,
Yeah.
and so if people aren't aware of what exactly I'm talking about, which I don't think anybody watching this stream or listening to this stream is oblivious to what's been going on, but the one that I keep going back to in my head when I'm talking about fake news and all this sort of thing is that CNN incident where they were interviewing the sister of the person who got shot, and CNN cut off the ends of it so that way she was saying, don't burn down our stuff, we need our stuff. Because right before that, she was calling for people to go to the suburbs and destroy their stuff. And then right after that, she was calling for people to set fire and attack people who live in this, or set fire to the suburbs and attack the people who live there. And you're like, they took that one little section in the middle where it sounds like she's calling for the end of violence, and they ran with that. It on both ends, she's calling for more violence, not less violence, and you're like, and they cut that little piece in the middle, and it made it act as, oh, she's calling for people, yeah, calling for people to not be violent, not set their own stores on fire, and not loot their own stuff, and not destroy their own property. And you're like, because she's asking people to go right in other people's neighborhoods. That's not better.
Yeah.
um,
Another factor I would point out, because decades ago, there was fewer sources of media. This is well before the
yes.
existence of the internet. You only had a couple radio shows, perhaps some cable news networks, perhaps one or two newspapers, nationally speaking, and some smaller ones, and that was really it. So everyone had to rely on almost the same source or couple of sources. Now you look at how the demand for media of various ideological bents, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
there was a huge demand for it, and it's being supplied. We see the ideological echo chamber of some people with the media they consume. Like for instance, people who watch and only trust MSNBC, CNN, and others who trust Fox News, Breitbart, and among others. There's some that are people call it liberal bias or conservative bias. You can easily Conundrum says, "Looking good, my man, at Humane." But
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, but that was like something I noticed as I was watching a political video, that when they're talking about Nixon and Trump, they pointed out like the time was totally different, and it mattered because of the availability of media. You know,
Yes.
24-hour television did not exist in the 1970s. It does today,
Mm-hmm.
and someone could completely isolate themselves, just watch Fox News or CNN or whatever, and it would have been impossible to do back then. But now it's simply by just clicking something. You know.
Yeah. Well, not only that. So there's the idea that people have more sources of information, right? That should have the opposite effect of what's going on right now. We should see people like, oh, wait a minute, people are going to call me on my BS. You should start to see people being more diligent with their reporting, and yet for some reason we're seeing like it seems to be getting more outrageous in their claims, and now it's to the point, and this is the main reason I wanted to talk on this topic, is they're talking about we've got this anonymous inside source inside the White House who is making claims about Donald Trump, and you're like, why remain anonymous at that point? All you have is your eyewitness report talking about all the bad things that's going on and how everybody hates Trump, and you're like, but you don't have any evidence, proof. There's no recording. This is the guy who wrote a book. He's the guy who led to Nixon's downfall and all that sort of thing. No, Deep Throat is the guy who led to Nixon's downfall, and you know why Deep Throat led to that? Because he had freaking proof of illegal activity that Nixon knew about. He had proof. He had evidence, which is why he was able to remain anonymous, because it didn't matter what he said he saw or what he claimed was going on. He had the documents and the recordings to back it up. These anonymous people now, people are making claims as if they are the same as Deep Throat, and he's exposing some, some insider baseball that, and like, there's no proof. There's nothing behind it. It's just hearsay. It's their word against Trump's word, and you're like, why would you accept the anonymous source over the source who's willing to stake his own name and reputation on it? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
When it's his versus, his, when you're in a he said, she said, or his word versus your word, then it's the person with the more credible character that you should lean towards. And like, oh, well, I don't know which one is true, but this guy has a history of being trustworthy and honest, and and that other guy, nothing, bubkiss, zero, goose egg. So I'd go with the guy you can trust more. And even all right, I'll stop going on my rant and let you say something.
Well, yeah. This is something I've noticed besides just the media. This is something that I've had to fight people on this issue and others, where due process and the burden of proof goes out the window. Like if I wrote a news article about HUMANe saying that he punched Ham in the face, I'm going to need to have some evidence that this took place, like a police report, or if Ham had a picture of being punched in the face. I need something to prove that HUMANe did this, or if I'm saying that
that's the funny thing, because there's actual, like, that's a very good. I'm glad you went with that particular analogy, because that's kind of what's going on. This anonymous source that they're spouting is like, oh, he's giving us all this insider details, and they're saying Trump said X about Pence, and then Pence is like, that never happened, and Trump is like, that's never happened. Both the victim and the one who the supposed victim and the one who supposedly did the thing that created a victim, both of them agree that incident didn't happen. So you're coming in from an outside source, and both participants say that never happened.
Yeah.
So this would be like, so you make the claim about, me punching Ham, and if Ham comes in and he doesn't have a black eye, and he's like, no, that never happened. HUMANe never punched me. I'm sure he wants to, but he never did. People would be absolutely out of their mind to continue to rely on you and continue, like, say, oh, yeah, well, S-Man said it happened, so it must have happened. You're like, both people involved say it didn't happen. How can you still be a credible source?
Yeah, another example, and this is one that actually happened, and I swear it happened because they've been reporting on this. A lot of people have been claiming that Mike Pence anonymously wrote a scathing piece, I think in the New York Times. He denies it, everyone else is denying it, but They're saying the way it was written and the words that were used
Yeah.
are their supposed evidence, which it's like, even still, there are people who have very similar styles of writing.
Well,
Um,
it's word choice and things along those lines,
yeah.
but the problem there is if someone is known to use specific words, they don't use them when they're trying to remain anonymous.
Yeah, unless they're that inept at trying to stay anonymous.
Yeah, it's kind of like it'd be like, you know, it'd be like Trump trying to remain anonymous, writing a letter and put "you're fired" in there and to say bigly, and you're like, and he has a specific manner of talking, and even when you're reading The Art of the Deal, it sounds like Trump. If he tried to write The Art of the Deal and put somebody else's name on it, or say, hey, written by anonymous, you'd be like, no, that's definitely Trump. That sounds like him verbatim. Whereas the Pence or the supposed Pence editorials, you're like, if that's Pence trying to hide who he is, he's doing a terrible job of it. That's which makes me think the anonymous part of it doesn't either. He should, if it is Pence, which I don't think it is, he should come out and just, take credit for it, because right now the left is like, oh, they want to celebrate a hero and all that sort of thing. So if it is Pence who wrote those, he has no reason not to come forward.
Yeah.
That's the thing that doesn't make sense. It's in his best interest to say, yeah, that was me, and the president's unfit, impeach the president, and then he gets to become the next president. It seems like that would be win-win all around. At least that's what they're claiming today. But
yeah.
More than likely, it is someone knowing Pence uses certain words and certain phrases, because the particular letters, those phrases seem to be littered with intent. Like, when Trump says bigly and all that sort of thing, I think he's been using it so long, he's been saying phrases like that so often, they become kind of habit, and he says them without really too much thought into it, right? Huge, we use the best word. He has that manner and that phrase. He says things very similar to each other. But when reading those on Pence, or the anonymous, when you're saying, oh, it's supposed to be Pence, you're like, well, that's not how Pence talks. And even though it's got words that Pence uses, that to me seems more like someone sprinkling breadcrumbs to get that maybe that's just me reading too much into it. But when I was reading it, that's what it sounded like. It wasn't him. It seemed a little too overtly, hey, this is Pence, and you're like, that raises flags for me, as opposed to, saying, oh, well, it's probably Pence. It's like, no, this is too much. Minority Report, right? So, Minority Report, there's that scene in Minority Report, Colin Farrell's trying to catch Tom Cruise, and he walks into the scene of the crime where Tom Cruise shot the guy, and he sees, like, oh, well, there's this whole bedspread with all these pictures of, and he's like, this is an orgy of evidence. That's what gets Colin Farrell's character thinking, this is a setup, because there's no such thing as an orgy of evidence. You're always scraping and trying to find the clues and piece it all together. Here it is, just thrown in your lap, like, oh, obvious what happened. You're like, that's what I'm seeing when I was reading the Mike Pence. I'm like, there's I keep calling them the Mike Pence editorial. I'm making that mistake. The anonymous editorial that are supposedly Mike Pence's, I'm seeing like, he's smarter than this. Whoever wrote this, there's too much pointing to Pence for it to be Pence. It just doesn't make sense to me. It seems more like a setup or a cover up, and be like, hey, focus over there. Don't focus on who actually may have wrote. I think in my mind, I think the more likely conclusion is they wrote it themselves. And then they're claiming it was some White House insider.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny when when they put so much weight on someone that's anonymous, it's like if I was to make a claim, like a huge claim, if I'm convinced, like staunchly convinced that it's genuine, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have a problem putting my name to it. Like that whole thing that
Yes.
you and I were digging about. I did a video about that, and I said this is what I believe the evidence points to, and I felt comfortable enough signing my name saying this is what I think happened. If I didn't, I wouldn't have touched this with a 10-foot pole. And I
Yeah.
feel like that people, they like put too much weight into someone that's anonymous. If they know who said it, but they're saying we won't mention your name, that sometimes it could look suspicious, and other times I guess
The
it might not. It depends on the circumstance.
yeah, the circumstances because you know, FBI informants and that sort of thing. Well, they need to be remain anonymous. You don't want to be like, "Hey, this guy's our informant. That guy right there, standing right next to you, and you've got your loaded gun." So there are certain people who need to remain anonymous for their own protection, or so that way they can continue to gather information and that sort of thing. And the press has an obligation to keep their sources anonymous when that anonymous source could lose their job or could get, or their life is at risk and things along those lines, or there's a huge political fallout. But, and so that goes to the whistleblowers and all that sort of thing. But for these particular letters, it doesn't make any sense for the source to remain anonymous because being anonymous loses the credibility that you would have by putting your name to it. Like you said, yeah, if it's something you firmly stand by, you're willing to stake your reputation, you're willing to put everything out there. Whereas an anonymous, even if it is legitimate, it loses some of its credibility because the person isn't willing to come out and stand by it. Now, what makes up for that credibility is backing it up with evidence to support it, which is what a lot of anonymous sources rely on. Not only are they making claims about something, they are providing evidence to back up their claims.
Yeah, in this case with Pence, it's purely circumstantial.
Yeah, none of the stuff in that particular editorial or those letters has been corroborated by anybody, and it's actually been flat out denied by the participants. And you're like, that it's possible that it could be true, but more than likely it's made up because there should be some amount of something to back up what is being claimed. But so far there is nothing, and there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. If somebody made that same kind of, like, say somebody was a whistleblower for a company and saying, "Oh, this company is defrauding their investors and all that sort of thing," and they make this claim anonymous, and then the reporter gets the anonymous tip off, and then it starts investigating. It's like, no, actually, this company's on the up and up. There's no actual proof of fraud. All the claims that you made were false. Would they still continue to use that source and be like, "Oh, yep, well, let's just run with it and say that there's fraud," even though, yeah, that's what the equivalent of what's going on right now is like. Well, I don't. Even if you trust your source, they've been proven wrong more than right. So I don't know why you keep trusting them.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, to me it seems more likely that since they are falling back on the anonymous source, this is somebody internal at those organizations writing these. That's granted, I could be wrong on all of this. This is all speculation at this point, but then again, that's what happens when it's anonymous. I get to speculate. It's open for interpretation. But what I think is going on is they wrote it internally, and they're acting as if it's coming from a source from inside the White House.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a way to maybe have the media become more credible is to find a way to get them to the point of where everyone is so critical of them that they can't even go, maybe a full paragraph without linking something. So if it's like a new, like online, when I look at a CNN article, sometimes when they're referencing something like an incident or an event,
Mm-hmm.
in that the text will be highlighted so you can click on a link. Like if they're describing when the whole when they alleged that Donald Trump said the whole shithole countries comment, they could link something to refresh someone's
Yeah.
memory
Well,
about that
what
incident.
was that? The in whatever they were working on passing. I actually don't know what happened with that. Did they actually pass this or not? There was something that was going through parliamentary procedures in the UK that was basically going to prevent people from linking to their sources. Was that something 13, right? Like Article 13 or something like
I
that?
think it was. Let me check. Article 13.
Is it?
I heard various British people, Vanguard included, said they'd be fucked if this
Yeah.
actually passed. Let me see.
Yeah,
Article 13.
I don't know if it got passed or not. Is there an update on that?
I'm looking right now. Let me see. Okay, so there's an article from 4 hours ago about this. Let me see what that tells me. This is from
Okay.
musicbusinessworldwide.com. So it says Article 13 would take the music industry backwards. And Humane, I've listened to your old songs. Do you have a license for that mixtape?
What?
That's a Sargon reference. I'm not gonna lie, that made me chuckle.
Yeah. I guess I
All
don't
right.
get that. But
Eh. Uh, I'm a screen share.
license for that mixtape? Oh,
Yeah, he
because
was.
he was
Yeah.
talking about art. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's
Well,
see.
most of my stuff was original. So anyway,
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
let's see. Yeah. So Article 13, a provision within the European Copyright Directive,
Yeah.
which seeks to ensure legal repercussions for digital platforms which host unlicensed music, even when that copyright infringement is user generated.
Yeah, but it's not just for music and stuff like that. It also included digital broadcasts of news outlets and with their yeah. So this particular article is referencing its impact on news outlets and all that sort of, or sorry, music outlets, but other people have been looking at it as like, oh wait, this is terrible news for media applications because this means if somebody else recorded a video of an incident, you can't even link to their source that you're using for your news, or if you're making a rebuttal, you can't link to the original source of it because they're going to claim copyright against you and get your entire article taken down or your entire rebuttal taken down. I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah, and with things like this, which I'll leave you a link to it,
Okay.
just if you want to see this for the record.
Yeah,
But
it's the same principle in that,
yeah,
although it makes more sense in the music industry because there's a lot of times where people sample other people's songs or they've got their music playing in a movie or in the background of a music video or so they've got other people's content in their stuff and um they either don't give them royalties or they don't make they don't do stuff. I mean, there's been a couple of court cases around this and all that sort of thing. Um,
yeah,
the most famous one being the what was that? Drawing a blank on the name. Rick something. Robin Thicke. The good Marvin Gaye estate sued him and for that Blurred Lines music video and song. Because
yeah,
it was too close to another Marvin Gaye song, and they both our artists mentioned that they were listening to Marvin Gaye stuff and they wanted to do a song that had a similar sound. Anyway, it's a that's a whole but it's kind of the same idea in that people are using your stuff without your permission. But when you're linking articles and you're making rebuttal videos and you're saying this is the source of my information that I am reporting on, and that gets put in the same category as copyrighted or written music, that's where you go overboard and you're like, this creates so many more problems than it supposedly fixes. Well, the
yeah.
other yeah, and I want to state on record, I disagree with the court's decision on that Marvin Gaye incident. I think that makes, if you know anything about music and music theory, the what they did in that court case makes no sense. I would say, what was that? The court case against Vanilla Ice, and it was, the Under Pressure song, right? Who was that? It was David Bowie and
I can't remember.
Was it the Stones? No, it wasn't the Stones. That was that was a Dancing in the Street nonsense. No, man, my brain is not working all that great right now. Yeah, but because the Under Pressure song and the introduction to Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby, it's dun 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 dun, right? That, and then the other one is, they're very, very similar. They're off by one note, but they also have the same kind of rhythm. But the courts ruled that those weren't, they weren't close enough to, and they couldn't, you can't copyright, a chord progression. It's silly. It's not the exact same song. There's a little bit of an overlap, and yeah, they're very, very similar. But there's only 12 notes. And there's only so many rhythms. There's only so many, and songs that have a similar style are going to sound the same. So the whole Marvin Gaye situation with that, what was the name of that? Blurred Lines versus Marvin Gaye's, what was the name of his song? I had it in my head earlier. Because it's not Let's Get It, yeah. Not Let's Get It On keeps popping in my head. I'm like, no, that's not the song. It's... They are similar, but they are not the same song, and there's so many differences that it's obvious to anybody who's looking at music theory and all this. Like, yes, they are similar in nature. They didn't copy one song and paste their own. There's enough differences there to make it its own unique thing. It's paying homage to the style and to the artist without ripping them off.
Yeah.
So that, but that opened the door, and now Ed Sheeran, I think, is also facing a similar suit because his song is the same chord progression as another song, but what was the name? I forget who was trying. Yeah, it was Marvin Gaye. Yeah, so that one was "Let's Get It On" versus "Thinking Out Loud."
Yeah.
So that. And very similarly sounding songs, but Ed Sheeran has a completely different strum pattern. There are notes in between that are completely different. There's also a different guitar part. There's also so there's a solo in the Ed Sheeran version that isn't there. That there's an extra bridge. There's a whole bunch of extra stuff in the Ed Sheeran song. You're like, how can you make a claim that these two songs that one song is ripping off of another if there's this much differences between the two? And so the one video I was watching talking about this particular topic, and he was saying that there's more differences in the Ed Sheeran version versus the Marvin Gaye version than there are similarities. So how can you focus on the similarities and say that they're a copy of one another? And I would say the same argument applies to that the Blurred Line song and Marvin Gaye's. Like, yeah, similar, there's an overlap, but there's more differences between the two songs than there are similarities. To focus on the similarities seems stupid.
Yeah.
Because that's the article. Yeah, so the whole copyright thing, it's being blown out of proportions, and like now it's getting to the point where like you can't even make something that is mostly original and just shares a little bit with something else. You have to. It's gonna get to the point where you can't do anything because everything has already been done. And everything is copywritten, and everything is off limits, and you can't link to sources, and you can't add your ideas to something else because somebody else already did that. But like what you were saying originally is what we need is more linking to sources and showing the original that everything is coming. more references to the original, more pointing people like, hey, this isn't completely original. It's these two things put together, or this thing plus this. We need more of that, and
Yeah, because I think that if people start to demand a citation, not the whole citation needed, like if they're thinking,
yes,
okay, we've looked at all these things, what did you get this, where did you get this information to come to that conclusion? Like here, and a good example
mm-hmm.
is if when Hawk was trying to argue that FDR ended the Great Depression, yet cites no sources in a video he did a year ago. Like, to me, that is very poor because people could say, well, you've shown nothing, and I have all this evidence, at least on my side, that's saying he did not.
Yeah,
That's an example of where if you're going to make a claim that is going to be controversial, or even if it's not, it's
yes,
always good to have at least something to show how you got the information, how did you come to that conclusion. There are exceptions though. If it's something that is common knowledge,
yeah.
you don't have to. Like Pearl Harbor happened. I don't
Oh
need really
wait,
say
what?
any.
Proof? Cite your sources that Pearl Harbor happened. I don't believe you. I have no idea what Pearl Harbor is. And wait, May, are you talking about the same Pearl Harbor? No, it's common enough knowledge that yeah, okay, yeah, you can talk about it, and you can talk about things that are general knowledge that people widely accept. It's
Yeah,
But when you say something that is contrary to the norm, like you can, if you're talking about Pearl Harbor, and you try to make the claim, which actually I do, if you make the claim that the United States had foreknowledge of the attack and let it happen and actually provoked it in the first place, that's not widely accepted or common knowledge. And in order to make a claim and make a case for that, you have to cite sources and you have to make a sound argument.
yeah,
Which
you know, yeah, you definitely have to.
that's a
Or
subject for another video, but yeah, I do
of
think the
course,
United States let it happen, but that's just me.
yeah, there are various things where it's like obviously there's no need to, but if you feel the need to, then go right ahead. It makes the case even more ironclad. But there are things where it's like you definitely are going to need to if you're going
Yes.
to speak about the issue. Like a good example I got is the JFK assassination.
Oh yeah.
Like if you mention anything about it, you're really going to have to rely off of history and rely off of what you can find, and to make a case either way. You know because it's still a hotly debated thing.
Yeah, and even after the release of the those documents that had been classified for decades for apparently no reason, because the stuff that was in there not all that important. The only thing that was kind of interesting to me, granted I did not read all of them. There's too much to go through in that. Yeah, it's but other people did go through them, and I saw links of hey, this is kind of interesting and new information. So there are people who sifted through that and found, like, hey, this is stuff that we didn't previously know. One of the interesting things was I don't remember if it was the FBI or the CIA. Um, they were under the impression that Oswald had a partner or an informant or somebody who was working with him in order to, because that the route that they took through Dallas was not public knowledge, and only a few people would have known that. Now, Oswald wasn't in that few people. How would he have known that the book depository would have been a good place if he didn't know the route? So the investigation is like, no, he had somebody telling him what the route was going to be. That he had an accomplice as opposed to a lone wolf narrative. And I was like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense now. And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
guess maybe he didn't act. I mean, that
yeah,
confirms my theory. I think he was a Ponzi. But anyway, maybe that's
yeah,
confirmation bias on my end. But I was like, ooh, that's kind of interesting.
yeah.
But
I've
still,
even
you
seen.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the JFK movie, for the record, everyone. That was a very interesting movie. But anyhow,
Yeah,
you
to
know,
make a claim that Oswald didn't act alone, I would have to, if somebody was actually arguing against me, if I was actually trying to make that case, I would need to cite those sources. I would need to go and find those documents that were released. I would need to, you can't just accept it by me stating it. I could be making that up. You have
yeah,
no idea. I mean, I think I have a pretty good track record of telling the truth and researching things as thoroughly as I can, as I, I guess as reasonably thoroughly. No, what's
Never
that?
heard that. Never heard that put together like that.
Nah, that's not correct way of saying that. As thoroughly as is reasonably expectable, I should say. There we go. I guess
Yeah.
it's a better way of stating it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I'm going to spend 40 years researching this stuff that is kind of interesting, but not like, oh, I got to prove this. No, because there's some people who dedicate their entire lives to proving that Oswald was a patsy and all that sort of thing. I'm not one of those guys. I'm just interested in it. I've done some basic level research on it, and that's something that I found and thought was interesting. And it's like, oh, that's worth spreading, or at least making people aware of. But if I was actually trying to make the case that Oswald did not act alone, was a part of a larger organization, I would have to get all that evidence, put it together, link to it, show you the documents. Otherwise, my entire argument, it's not supported. It's just kind of hanging in the air, and any little thing can come and knock it down. So the other thing is an argument like that, or a position like that. If I'm trying to prove definitively that Oswald was part of a larger organization, and you were of the opposite opinion, and you didn't have it, if there was no doubt in your mind that he acted alone, my argument without any evidence is not going to change your mind. Even though it's enough for me, and it's like, okay, that confirms what I already believed in order to convince somebody else, having your argument be completely unsupported and being hearsay and drawing things that might be true and putting them together, you're not going to convince people who are of the opposite opinion or the opposite viewpoint. The only way to actually be able to change someone's mind is to be able to provide evidence and reason in unison. And then if the person ignores the evidence and reason, then they're a crazy person, or they're not somebody that's worth your time. But if it's just reason alone, and if they doubt the evidence, okay, that's a rational person. They're acting rationally. You haven't provided them with enough to definitively prove something. But if you definitively prove something and they still maintain, then they're... I'm with Stefan Monalou and I'm on this, and I'm like, yeah, cut ties with them. They're not... That's not a rational or reasonable person. If they're not acting according to evidence and reason, they're not a good influence on you, and they're not somebody you want to... They're not somebody you want to waste your time with, but also they're bound to lead you into irrational and crazy things as well. Anyway, that's...
Yeah. And I think that once people start to demand that media, whether it be independent media like, on the internet, where it's just one person or a podcast, or to like the extent of like CNN and Fox News, if they start to demand more and more citations, instead of just blindly believing whatever Fox News or CNN has to say, I think that this whole thing where it's just, oh, you're just listening to liberal media or conservative media will die off.
Yeah, well, this is one of the big things, because I do want to talk about this, because this concerns something that happened recently with Alex Jones, because Alex Jones is now off of everything.
I heard.
His Twitter has been suspended, as well as the rest of the stuff. Also, the InfoWars app has been removed from Apple. I think the only place that Alex Jones has a say is on the InfoWars website, and possibly on the app on Google Play. I don't know if it's still available on Google Play or if that got removed in the last round. But Alex Jones, when it came to Alex Jones and what he was saying and what he was reporting on, people didn't believe it was true. They went and fact-checked him on stuff. He didn't have the same what's the prestige that seems to be that people have built around MSN and NBC and like all these major media outlets and even Fox to some degree, where people just accept it as true whatever they're presenting. When you listen to Alex Jones, you're like, okay, I gotta verify what this guy is saying because he sounds like a nutcase. I need to make sure that what he's saying is legitimate. People, when they listen to Alex Jones, they go in knowing that it's not all that trustworthy. He's saying some stuff that doesn't sound right, doesn't ring true. It's something I have to investigate and fact check. People watch Alex Jones and listen to Alex Jones with that in mind. For some reason, when people watch CNN, the same level of scrutiny doesn't enter their mind. It's not wait a minute, they're reporting that on national TV, but do they have their facts right? Are they presenting it accurately? I'm talking about not people in our community, because, I mean, YouTubers like us, I mean, we're kind of more of towards the skeptical leaning people and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. We also provide like quite a few citations, like you did during the climate change discussion, and I did with my S-Band Live episodes, Dark Column of the Strike Force. We'll provide, and even when we screen share, you'll be able to see if Hangouts is working that day. You'll be able to see the links and the website and the title, and it gives you a pretty good idea where to go if you want to see it for yourself.
Yeah. But mainstream people, like the talking about generalities, right? The people who watch CNN regularly and all that sort of things, if they were to watch Alex Jones, they would view Alex Jones with skepticism, and rightfully so. But those same people view CNN as a trustworthy source, and you're like, no. The correct position is to be skeptical of everything. To be skeptical of Alex Jones and of CNN. Don't let CNN rest on past successes or the previous times where they've been right. And don't let Alex Jones rest on times where he's been previously right. It's every instance of like, okay, you're saying something that doesn't sound right, doesn't sound true. Rather than just accepting it, I need to go look into it and make sure that you're on the up and up. That's what that's what you're supposed to do. Now, if somebody's saying something that's common knowledge and you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Don't waste your time investigating something like, oh, wait, you said that cold is a virus. And you're like, I need to investigate whether that... Are you serious? No. But if someone says, oh, there's a tape of Donald Trump saying the N-word to Omarosa and it's out there, maybe, let's report on this for a week. That's like, wait a minute, what? That sounds like absolute nonsense to me. Don't accept that, and don't accept that. Just that, like, oh well, they said it on national TV. It must be true.
Yeah, even my own parents, who are liberal and progressive Democrats who really like CNN, they're like, we want to see the tape. If you have the tape, let's see it. And I'm like, okay, at least they have more intellectual honesty than people who are just saying, oh my, OMG, Donald Trump, the racist fascist, said to the Omarosa, or whatever the hell her name is, the N-word. Let's impeach him. No, like, at least there's more. At least
off, that's not an impeachable offense, but don't try telling them that. Being a racist is not impeachable. It's not breaking the law. It's not a violation of the oath of office. Otherwise, Andrew Jackson would have gotten impeached.
Andrew Johnson and LBJ.
Johnson or Jackson? No, it was Jackson, right?
Andrew Johnson was okay. Jackson, I would not be shocked.
No, Jackson was the guy who screened "Birth of the Nation" in the White House, right? That was Jackson.
That was Woodrow Wilson, actually.
That was Wilson.
Yeah, that was Woodrow Wilson. Andrew Johnson said that blacks should go back to the plantation. LBJ, he did call black people the N-word quite a bit, even while he was president. Nixon wanted to abort mixed-race babies. But yeah, Wilson did screen Birth of a Nation in the White House, I think in 1915, if I'm not mistaken. Which, That's pretty sad, but given his time, I mean, it's not that surprising. Andrew Jackson, I don't remember, but I wouldn't be
Oh,
shocked.
okay, yeah, that was Wilson. I don't know why I thought Wilson and that was Jackson, but yeah, Jackson confirmed racist president. There's plenty
Yeah.
of evidence behind that. I was mistaken, and I'm glad see, you double checked me. That's exactly what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do. You're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right, and then you called me on it, and then I'm like, oh, wait, am I misremembering something? Yeah. So
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson
Yeah.
screamed "Birth of the Nation" in the White House. Both men pretty racist. Not
Yeah.
impeachable. Nothing
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah, like you were saying, Nixon has used the N word. Even people in more recent times, like in the after the Civil Rights Act was passed, presidents after that were racists. They say they're on record saying incredibly racist things. Nothing. No impeachment from Congress. This is well after civil rights has been passed. Civil Rights Act.
Yeah. There is one
Nobody's
claim
ever been
though.
impeached or even been considered for impeachment because of racism. For
Yeah.
some reason until now. And now for some reason like, oh, hey, we should impeach him for that. And you're like, what?
That
I don't
opens up
think
a
it's
huge
true,
can of
but
worms.
even if true, you can't kick him out of the White House for it.
You can vote him out, but that's a stupid reason all on its own. Where it's like, so let's say a president's doing a good job, but they're stupid for the shit they say. That it's like, sure, that person may be a colossal dickhead, but if they're making the country better, whatever, it's your vote. You do what you
Yeah.
want with it. But one thing I'll point out is there is a claim actually that is in dispute whether or not LBJ said that he would get, and I say with quotes, them niggers to vote Democratic for
Yeah.
200 years. That is under dispute. People say it's not credible that he actually said that. Um, but nonetheless, like there's various things where it's like, no, he is on record having said some very racist things.
Yeah.
Truman is on record for saying very racist and anti-Semitic things. Same with his wife.
So while there is no official record of LBJ saying that, it seems in line with the character that is presented elsewhere. And so you're like, okay, it came from somebody who actually worked in his administration that said quoted him as saying that. He said things along those same lines. It's not completely unreasonable to think that he also said this, about, getting him to vote Democrat for the next 100 years. That seems pretty plausible that happened. But for Trump, that seems incredibly out of character. And maybe he is lying. Maybe he's a completely different person behind closed doors. But for some reason, the people saying he's an out-and-out racist and he's going so far as to say that to people's faces, seems like that's a really difficult thing to hide for, 50 plus years in the media spotlight.
Yeah.
Especially when there are pictures of him getting an award for the Ellis Island, the Ellis Island Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Next to Muhammad Ali and Rosa Parks. And you're like, there's also Jesse Jackson praising Trump and his efforts and helping the black community. You're like, man, if he is a racist, he's been hiding it really, really well from all of these people and these organizations. How did they not pick up on it? And how are they just now finding out about how evil and racist he is now? And you're like, how is he... It defies all reason that no one would have said anything up until he started running for president. Like, oh yeah, by the way, this guy, he's secretly super racist. Like the most racist person you'll ever see, but only behind closed doors when nobody's watching and nobody's recording. Except for maybe, apparently, Omarosa, who recorded...
Yeah, but that tape completely exists, everyone.
Completely exists, which is why... No, because the grab her by the pussy thing, they took that and ran with it for weeks. If a audio recording of Trump saying the N-word exists, that would be 24/7 news on every major network except for maybe Fox for until Trump, the end of Trump's presidency. That would be on repeat. You would hear about it every day for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
They blasted the grab her by the pussy thing for months. And you're like, everybody's like, this is kind of a non-issue. This is no big deal. This is kind of silly that you're putting all this weight. But those same people would not be so lenient if Trump was saying something that Omarosa says he said. If he was actually being racist, that would completely change my perception. I'm like, oh, if he was actually doing what she claimed and there's an audio recording, that would change a lot about my perception of Trump and his character. And I suspect the majority of Americans would also fall and be like, hey, yeah, the grab her by the pussy thing, who cares? That's not a big deal. That's exactly, we already knew that about Trump. No new information there.
I guess it's the context in which it was said.
The context in which it was said, but also he's a known philanderer and womanizer.
Yeah, and he said in the tape that they would let him. That was something I had to point out repeatedly. Yeah. It's like, do I think it, like, if he didn't say that, maybe you could put a case for it, but he literally said in that tape from 2005.
Yeah, and he's also talking about groupies, so a lot of people looked at that and like, well, I don't know what you guys, this is not a big deal. But if he's out there calling this woman the N-word to her face, and there's a recording of it, that seals Trump's fate for the vast majority of Americans. Like, they would not vote for him in 2020 if they thought he was a racist.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people where that would be enough to turn their support of him away.
Yeah, and I mean, unless like whoever the Democrats nominate is such a fucking joke, then like
I mean they would have to try really hard to lose.
Yeah, I mean implying that they put much effort in that anyway.
Yeah, but that would be the end of Trump's presidency, because that would be what defined it. It's like, yeah, this guy was a racist. That is their ace in the hole if they have that audio recording, and so they should, because that would completely make the rest of his current term a sitting duck president, and I mean that would neutralize his any momentum he has.
Yeah, I mean, unpopular opinion, everyone. I don't think he just from seeing how things are going, at least right now, I don't think he has very much momentum anyway. But nonetheless, any momentum that he does have would go in the toilet, or actually better to say it, in the garbage disposal.
Yeah, that would end his presidency, and the odds of him making a second term would be next to nothing. So if they had this audio tape, they would be releasing it now, and that would the other side effect of that is that would solidify a blue wave in the in Congress for the midterms here.
Yeah. To me, it's like
the releasing of that audio would, there's their blue wave.
Yeah. If they did that, it is within their best interest to get her to release that. Unless it's in other people's possession, it would be in their best interest to have that released.
Well, even if it's in other people's, like, they got to go find those other people and be like, dude, this is They would be, knocking on the door daily, bugging them, like, hey, you got to release that. You got to release that. Here's money. Here's money. Here's my firstborn child. Give me that tape. They would be pestering whoever does have the tape nonstop to release it if it existed. So if that was true, people who originally supported Trump would flip, but also people who are opposed to Trump now, they would be like, okay, we need to elect a Democrat Congress to prevent this racist president from passing anything else and getting anything through. That would swing them majorly, right? Because right now, I don't think the Democrats are going to get too much. I think Republicans are going to hold both the House and the Senate. I don't think Republicans are going to make huge gains and take over and dominate, but I don't think they're going to lose control.
Yeah, I think even if they did, I can imagine
Yeah,
it'd be like a blue ripple,
yeah.
like the,
If they do, it's probably going to be by a small sliver. It's going to
like narrow control,
yeah.
like
It
51 senators, 218 Congress people, you know, everywhere else it's like by narrow margins, and
yeah
it's I think that it will be close, just considering how both sides are currently doing with their nominees and everything,
yeah
and the yeah, the entire thing with it's also how people are covering the midterms, and it's
mm-hmm.
like some of the things. It's like a good example is like polls. Is like how the sample size. How many people did you poll? Um, when various people do it, like when CNN or Fox News does a poll, it's like, did you go outside of your fan base? If not, then I can't trust the poll. But if you went outside of it and went to other places for the poll, it might have some more credibility.
Yeah, there was another one I saw somebody posting on Twitter. Um, I don't remember which organization, which media outlet presented their poll, but the guy was saying, "Did you not realize we can see how you gathered your data for your polls, and it gives the distribution of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, and of course they're going to be if you've got the I think I don't remember the exact numbers, but the percentage of people who responded who were outspoken Republicans or who declared themselves to be Republicans was in the 20s. There was like 40 something percent of the respondents were Democrat, and then the remainder were independents. And you're like, well, of course that's going to side more towards the Democratic than in this particular the outcome of your polls. You've got more people participating who are already of that political persuasion. That's gonna change the outcome of your poll based on the number of participants being what's the word I'm looking for here? Declaring themselves to be Democrats. Yeah, you can expect them to respond in this poll more in favor of Democrats.
Yeah.
If it's not a 50-50 split sample size, you can't be like, oh, can you believe on our poll, Democrats won across the board? I'm like, it's because you had more Democrats participating in it. That seems like that would be a logic, pretty obvious, right?
Yeah, and yeah, it's like that's why I think everyone should be skeptical of the polls. Like Hawk keeps posting polls where the Democrats are slightly or decisively leading in some areas, or they're
yeah,
coming close. Like in Texas with Beto O'Rourke, or however you pronounce his name, and Ted Cruz, again, and in other places, it's like the polls
yeah,
said Hillary Clinton was leading by pluralities, like really close pluralities, to decisive majorities, and we all know how that turned out. While they were
yeah.
technically correct in one aspect, they were wrong in how it actually would completely turn out. They were right that she would win the popular vote, but they were wrong in how many states she would carry. It was
Yeah.
pretty embarrassing.
So, yeah, out of all the ones that I'm aware of, I think Cruz is the only one that I'm kind of like, ooh, that actually might be closer than I would like it to be. I I hope that's not the case, and I hope he wins in a landslide because this. Um, I don't like Ted Cruz as a person. He seems like a very slimy kind of
Douchebag.
yeah, kind of a douchebag. But as a politician, I wish we had more like him. Um, despite I like him as a character, I think he's got a lot of character flaws but as far as what he has said in regard to politics and what he's said in debates and all that sort of thing, I was like, yes, this guy is a very intelligent guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I may
Yeah.
not like him personally or as his personality and that sort of thing. Doesn't matter. I think the guy is right, and I think he's right more often than he's wrong. And
Yeah.
I wish we had more politicians that were like him.
Yeah, I agreed. I thought he destroyed Bernie Sanders in the healthcare debate. I mean, it's not difficult because it's Bernie Sanders, but I thought that I thought he had performed better than Bernie Sanders did,
Hmm.
and he was
Well,
pointing out all these things, and you know,
the
he,
the big difference between Cruz and Bernie Sanders in that debate is Cruz kept citing reports, polls, numbers, raw data. Bernie was talking about abstractions, and even when presented with people, or because I think this was that debate, because I know Bernie was talking about. I can't remember if this was during the campaign or if that was that particular debate. So maybe I'll hold
I
off because
think
I
that
know
yeah,
somebody asked him a question about Obamacare and all that sort of thing, and it was somebody who was actually dealing with the outcomes of it, a small business owner. So I think that might have been during the campaign, and Bernie was like, "Oh, yep, that's not a problem." She's like, "No, I'm a business owner. I'm telling you that that's a problem. That's not a problem for it's like that's a problem for the 1%." And she's like, I was looking at that, I'm like, Bernie's out of his freaking mind. Somebody
yeah,
somebody is right here who says that they are dealing with exactly the problem that you say doesn't exist. Uh, but so I don't think I'm not sure if that was in the debate. I think it might have been the Q&A section after that particular debate, or maybe that was during the presidential run.
I think the debate, if I'm not mistaken, took place in January of 2017.
Yeah, the healthcare debate between Cruz and Bernie was it was after the election and all that sort of thing. It was 2017,
Yeah,
but I can't remember if that particular incident was in that debate or if it was from a previous where they were
yeah, I'll have to
talking about
look at
healthcare.
that.
So there, because there was a Q&A session after that debate. Um,
Mhm.
but I just remember I was like, dude, Bernie is talking about abstract concepts and his view of it is kind of like Ham's, where it is an idealistic view of, hey, this is going to be everything is going to be great and awesome, and there's no downside to consider. And you're like, and Ted Cruz is bringing out, well, according to the raw data and the number and this, there's a lot to consider that could go wrong, and by ignoring that, you're going to get to wrong conclusions.
Yeah, and you know, just looking at those type of things, it's like it's weird. Like how can a Republican in a really Republican state be nearly beating nearly like someone that is nearly beating him in the polls? Like this is
Yeah.
just a U.S. congressman from West Texas. And it's like really Democratic there at least. How is this guy nearly beating a incumbent Republican senator in the polls? Like I think that I don't know if Ted Cruz's popularity to unpopularity ratings
Well,
are in his favor or not, but
yeah, so while Texas has been predominantly Republican, what I why I think he might potentially lose is because there has been a flood of Californians moving to Texas and making Texas like where they came from.
yeah, um,
So that's why I think there might be enough liberals who jumped ship from California and were like, "Oh, whew, it's a good thing we got out of that sinking ship. Hey, this one's still floating. What can we do to make it not float anymore?" Um, that's what I think, because I mean that's pretty obvious in a lot of what's going on in Texas is they're starting to implement all these liberal policies. Like, no, that's what sank California. Why would you
yeah,
want them here? Why are you bringing them to Texas? That yeah.
yeah. Is especially yeah, because they were pointing out like I think it was either your brother or someone else on one of my streams from a while back was saying that Texas. I actually think someone was saying Texas was getting more democratic. I think
Yes.
your brother was losing his shit over that. It was funny, but I can't blame him. California is run by Democrats, and you look at the state of California, um, with the disaster that it is,
Mm-hmm.
it's and they're literally violating federal law, and it's a joke. It really is. It's like, and they say like I'm not a fan of the Republicans either, but it's the pot calling the kettle black with the Democrats in California. And the weird thing is, for anyone who doesn't like the Democrats in California for their Senate race, they're screwed with the jungle primary. The top two vote getters were the Democrats, so no
Yeah.
matter what, it's the Democrats are going to win
Yeah.
California.
Well, that's kind of always. I mean, that's been the case for decades. But man, that's kind of a messed up situation. It's like if you're a Republican or a conservative in California, you're screwed.
Yeah, fortunately for them, though, the race for governor does include a Republican. Uh, I think he's a businessman and he does support Trump. He didn't originally. He thought he was a counterfeit conservative. I think his name is John Cox, if I'm not mistaken. He's the
Oh
Republican
yeah.
nominee for. Yeah.
Well, that is a reasonable assumption because Trump used to be Democrat. Was registered Democrat. Most of his family was still registered Democrat, and I mean he's been very supportive of Hillary and other Democratic politicians in the past, as far as giving them funds, going to fundraisers, schmoozing with them and all that sort of thing. There's plenty of pictures of him getting along just fine with Democrats. Like I said,
Yeah.
pictures
His
of him with Jesse Jackson praising him as uh, I forget what they was talking about, but something about that. I think it was actually something to do with the NAACP. Jesse Jackson was cheering him on and something to do with that particular organization. Man,
Yeah.
my brain is not quite working right now. I've been up since 2 o'clock in the morning, so I am getting my brain's going into sleep mode. So
Yeah. Colta Ham says in the chat, Trump never endorsed Hillary. Believe me. Wasn't Trump a Democrat in 2008? Because his
yeah,
party affiliations changed a lot. He was
yeah,
Democrat.
he went Republican like with a year or two before he ran for president as a Republican. Not it was a
Yeah.
very sudden change.
Yeah, he was a Democrat, then he was a Republican in the 80s, then he was I think a Democrat again, then he went to the Reform Party, left that because of what was his name? Something Buchanan, Pat
Pat
Buchanan.
Buchanan, yeah.
Then he was independent for about a year or so after becoming a Democrat yet again, then a Republican, and here we are now. So I think maybe he did in 2008, but I obviously he didn't in
Yeah,
2016.
that's why when he first announced his presidency, a lot of people were like, "Wait, no, he's a Democrat. He can't run as a Republican." That's of course, but his entire platform and all the things he stood for, you're like, okay, those are conservative values. Those are conservative campaign promises. Okay, there's no way what he was talking about would fly with with Democrats. There's
Yeah.
no way his campaign policies would have gotten any headway there.
Yeah, the only Democrat I can think of that would be similar to Trump is Joe Manchin of the state of West Virginia. He is the most conservative Democrat in the Senate, yet they call him too liberal for West Virginia, which is stupid. But um, Trump was never a Democrat. Well, his party registration begs to differ.
Yeah.
Actually, I think
Also, like I said, he was there's plenty of videos and news articles about him supporting Hillary and going to functions with her.
yeah, there are pictures of Bill and Hillary Clinton with Donald and Melania Trump.
Yeah,
Um, and there were
political fundraisers. These are not just famous people getting together. These are political functions.
Yeah. Also, I think Trump was a moderate Republican a couple decades ago, or at least 20 years
Hmm.
ago. And there was a time, I think, when he was a Democrat, he did endorse single payer health care. So that should be getting Ham a hard on for hearing the word single payer health care. So you're welcome, Ham. But nonetheless, it's weird just seeing like the party affiliation change that frequently. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously,
Well,
you're going to have ideological shifts, but
so as far as I think Trump has been is it's actually more moderate than a lot of people give him credit for. I mean, everybody's saying he's an extreme right winger and all that sort of thing. I think he has been mostly kind of moderate, and the reason for the party switches and all that sort of thing, I don't think he's changed all that much in his viewpoints on things. Although he has stated emphatically that his views on abortion have changed, and healthcare would be another thing where yeah, as he became more aware of what was going on, he changed his opinion based on that. But for the most part, because I mean, there's several videos that you can watch of him talking about possibly running for political office or the presidency, And what he is saying in those videos from the 70s and the 80s and all that sort of thing, like, that's exactly what he was saying when he actually made his presidential campaign. So
Yeah,
there's been, he's been fairly consistent throughout, as far
yeah,
as when he talked about things that he would do if he was ever in charge.
yeah.
Um,
I found an interview he had with Larry King where they're like, "If you were to run for office, would you be a Republican?" He said, "Yes, he would." This was during the '80s, and I think he was critical
yeah,
of Ronald Reagan, actually, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so
yeah.
just for the
So
record,
yeah,
good.
so I just want to say what I think is I think he's more moderate than people, give him credit for. And him switching back and forth between parties has mostly been those parties moving their positions throughout the years, because it's absolutely insane to think that Republicans haven't been where they are right now, or to say that Republicans have always had their current position that they have right now, and that Democrats have always been. No, because Democrats have definitely moved more to the left, and Republicans, I think, have also moved more to the left in some areas, but more to the right in other areas. So to say that, as far as Democrats, I don't think they've moved to the right on anything. I can't think of any particular argument or any particular political issue where they've moved further right. Like,
Yeah,
Republicans were staunchly against the LGBT community and gay marriage and all that sort of things, but a lot of those have shifted to more accepted, more tolerance, and now there's less of a, you're not, it's very rare that you find a politician who's campaigning against LGBT. Usually that guy doesn't make it very far. But a
yeah,
lot of them talk about being open and accepting and all that sort of thing. That's a pretty
yeah.
huge shift for the Republican Party.
Yeah. So Coltaham has a
But
few comments to make, and I'll quickly
oh,
go over these.
okay.
He says, "Being serious, Trump is not a moderate. He's just as massively far right, along with the rest of the Republicans. Tax breaks for the rich, continuing our wars and starting more, leaving the Paris Agreement, calling climate change a Chinese conspiracy, nixing the Iran deal." In all honesty, um, so during his presidency, he ordered a travel ban. I do think that on immigration, I'd say he'd be more right leaning. If you do consider it a left right issue, then the tax cut, economically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I would call. I'm not saying it makes him a leftist at all, but I would see it as it would make him more of a crony. In all honesty, maybe it would make him right leaning, but just of
Well,
plutocracy, depending on how you look at it.
yeah.
There is no context where Dems move to the left. Ham says. I mean, on immigration,
Are you kidding
well,
me?
well,
I guess Ham doesn't think that socialism is on the left, because Democrats are openly calling for socialism. Bernie Sanders, Ocasio Cortez, she talked about turning the seats red. Now, she's probably, I don't, either she is a moron who doesn't understand that in the United States Democrats are blue and Republicans are red, or she was talking about turning it red as in communism, which I think, given this context of what she was talking about, that's still a stupid thing to say, but I think that's what she meant by turning the seats red.
yeah,
Red as in communism.
yeah,
Outspoken communism. And she's been, there have been Democrats praising her viewpoints and trying to get her elected.
yeah. I'm just saying, everybody, for the record, I would vote Republican as a motherfucker if I lived in her district. Democrats aren't
Yeah.
socialist in the slightest. Not even Ocasio Cortez. I think doesn't the bitch call herself a democratic socialist or some shit like that?
She said she was a communist.
Oh, Bernie.
I,
Um. So Ham says she and Bernie are sock dems.
yeah, democratic socialist. She keeps saying that as if that's different from actual socialism, but that is a more left wing position than the Democratic Party had previously. That you can't tell me that that's the same position Democrats have always had, because Democrats were right there during the McCarthy era, bashing socialism and bashing communism. To say that they haven't moved and yet they're embracing the exact policies that they used to criticize and reject. I, yeah, maybe you live in a different universe where that's not the case, and I'm like, but that's definitely a move more towards the left. Ugh.
Yeah, I generally think that I would say Donald Trump is definitely right leaning. As to how right wing, I would have to look over every political position and action within his presidency, kind of like what they do with the senators. And they're arguing Congress is getting, like with the Republicans, they're getting more conservative, and they're arguing, at least last I checked, they were arguing
Mm-hmm.
that the Democrats they're not moving as hardcore either way, but they're moving a certain way, but it's not as quickly as they allege the Republicans are. It was a video explaining how the Republican Party went from H.W. Bush to Trump in terms of how moderate they can be. Bernie is barely gaining purchase. Wait. The Hillary
What?
wing of the Democratic Party is still in control. The Bernie wing is barely getting purchase. I
He
hope the Dems
was
actually move left.
he was number two in the campaign. He was
Yeah, it was a
it was
close
a choice.
primary.
Okay, so the choice for Republicans was between Ted Cruz and Trump, and the choice for Democrats was between Bernie and Hillary. Are you
Yeah,
saying that it was 99% versus a 1%? No. That I don't I Hillary won, yes. But to say that he wasn't gaining grounds and he isn't becoming more towards the mainstream and they're not pushing the Bernie narrative as part of their mainstream platform, I I don't know what world you're living in. There's definitely been an increase in his popularity after the campaign. He has gained headway in the Democratic Party while the mainstream Democratic Party is losing support.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, Coltaham says Bernie was number two because he was popular among the voters, not the party. The party wanted Hillary. I would argue, I do think that there was something going on by the DNC to
okay.
prevent him from getting the
Yes.
nomination, but
Yeah. Oh, that's on record. There's
yeah,
documents that were released that state. Yeah, he didn't have a chance because the political system was rigged against him. But Ham, voters determine who gets elected. Doesn't matter what the party wants or what the party is pushing. The voters are supporting Bernie. The voters, Democrats, the voters are supporting Ocasio Cortez. More socialist. The party is also backing those particular candidates. Like Maxine Waters and Elizabeth Warren and all that. They're advocating for more socialist, more leftist policies than previous administrations. They
yeah,
want it. I don't understand how you can say that that's not a shift or a move more towards the left if they're going more extreme in what they're demanding and what they're asking for.
yeah. Um, Ham says, "I'm glad the mainstream Dems are losing populism." Yeah, Ham has now described himself as a left populist liberal. Um, yeah, he says populism for the win. I don't know what your exact take is
Well,
on populism. In all
yeah,
honesty,
because technically Donald Trump won the populism. So,
populism was kind of a big thing during the primaries. With, Bernie was a left populist. Donald Trump was, at
the
least from what he would say, at least given from what his statements were, came off as a right wing populist.
yeah. So if Ham is a populist, I mean, I guess left wing populist, and he supports Bernie, but I don't understand how you can say that because uh, Carter was a Democrat, right?
Yeah, but Jimmy Carter was a Democrat.
Jimmy Carter.
What up,
To,
bitches?
yeah, Jimmy
Yeah,
Carter was a Democrat. To
there
say
you go, Ham.
that Jimmy Carter would be as for these programs as Bernie Sanders is, and as the Democratic Party seems to be pushing in these midterms, that's I don't know what world you're living in to say that they haven't moved further left than Jimmy Carter.
They haven't what? I
They've
must
moved
have
further
missed the
left than
last.
Bill Clinton.
How have they moved further left to Bill Clinton? Hillary Clinton pushed for a single payer health care in the 90s. Now that in 2008, in 2008 they passed the right wing counter to single payer, which is the individual mandate system.
Yeah.
And not to mention, when Bush left office, we were in only 2 wars.
Now
Obama turned that up to 7.
Also, I thought I thought there was a statement from Jimmy Carter saying he wanted some form of a single payer health care system implemented. If I'm not, let me double check that. But nonetheless,
Jimmy Carter?
yeah, I thought I saw something about that.
Maybe I am mistaken here.
Let me see. Jimmy Carter, single payer healthcare, single payer system. Let me see if I can find okay. So from last year, President Carter, lack of a universal health care should be a national scandal. Let me link that. There's plenty of articles. By just simply googling it, there's a lot where it's of similar quotes. Bill Clinton, when he ran for president, he did hint that he wanted single payer.
Yeah, single payer was a big thing for Dems back then. I wasn't.
Of course.
Don't believe I said anything to the contrary. I thought Jimmy Carter was against it, but maybe that's. But apparently he was for a single payer, so that's my mistake there.
I don't know if he held that position during his presidency, but he is most recently doing now. Bill Clinton, he failed to get that health care reform, but
because I know he pushed for it during his presidency. I don't remember Carter pushing anything along those lines during his presidency or his campaign.
Yeah.
But does it say when that particular quote was?
Let me see. All right. So the quote of him saying lack of universal health care should be a national scandal. Let me see. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are the inalienable rights at the heart of the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America.
Yeah.
Then it's trying to find where the.
By the way, I do want to say the Democratic Party is moving further to the left, but it's like you go from center right to just center. That's what the Democratic Party is doing right now.
You think the Democratic Party is center right? Ugh.
Well, I mean, if they're even more if they're even more warmongering than the previous Republican president, there's a bit of a problem.
Oh, okay. So from this article, it doesn't say when Jimmy Carter called for it, but so I'll have to find more about that as soon as I can.
So Democrats are peaceniks, and anybody who wants war is on the right. That doesn't make any sense because both parties have advocated war and have gotten into war. I don't really understand how you can say being a war hawk is a right-wing position.
Because, I would assume most people on the left are generally more diplomatic when it comes to foreign policy.
Why would you assume that?
Because I'm a left-wing person and I'm non-interventionist.
You're not the majority.
Majority of left people don't believe in interventionism. Oh, Jesus Christ, my roommate's looking at me with a terrifying look.
You mentioned not believing in intervention.
Oh, shit. My roommate's a fucking...
Not to that extent that you think. I think instead of going to the other countries they went to, we should have just went to Saudi Arabia. And fucked their shit up.
My roommate believes we should have fucked Saudi Arabia up instead of Iraq.
Yeah, I disagree, but it would have made a lot more sense.
Niger,
I could understand going to Saudi Arabia over going to Iraq.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that did it.
Yeah. Iraq had
Damn,
nothing
this
to do with
mic is
anything.
sensitive.
Yeah, it really is. That you got a good mic there, and good on you for getting that mic. But yeah, I think that the National Democrat. Oh, hang on a second. Okay, so Darkon says Obamacare was not the right wing alternative in healthcare. If anything, it was the centrist alternative. Unregulated.
Okay. The individual mandate system is a system first proposed by the Nixon administration, then Bob Dole, then Heritage Foundation, Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
The Massachusetts healthcare system was the individual mandate system. I mean, it is a right wing system. It is forcing you to participate in the market.
Mm-hmm. Darkon, if you want to join and argue this in the stream rather than the chat, you can do so. But
I mean, the left wing solution for healthcare is a single payer system.
Anyhow, I do think that with the Democrat, I do think that with some of their candidates, they're moving to they might as a whole might move to the left. But I do think that with some of the candidates, it would be kind of hard to get them to move to move quickly to the left. I think it's like a slow process. Like
I want to address Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez being socialists. They are not socialists. They are social democrats. They say they're socialists because they have no fucking idea of what a socialist is. A socialist is a post-capitalist, economic system. That Ocasio-Cortez advocated for tax breaks for small businesses. In what context does a socialist advocate for tax breaks for any kind of business?
All right, hang on a second. Darkon's message, I didn't get to read the rest of it. He says, and I'm quoting, he says, unregulated free market healthcare is the right-wing alternative.
Well, yeah, that's what I would say. It's like the individual mandate, that seems like a left-wing position.
Except it's not. It came from the right wing.
It came from the right wing. That doesn't mean that it is right-wing.
Well, it certainly ain't left. It sure as fuck ain't left.
It's more left than a free market solution, like what Darkon was saying. The right-wing position is let the markets handle it, keep the government out of it.
Yeah, you're literally letting the market. You're forcing people to participate in the market to have health care.
Yeah, which is not letting the market do its job. That's.
Hey, there are more flavors of right wing than just outright ANCAPism.
Yeah, I understand this, but ANCAP is the far right. So you're saying something that came from Republicans that is more towards left than letting the free market, that's still right wing. That doesn't make any sense to me. I am not saying it's on the left, but it's at least more towards the middle than saying let people do as they choose.
Okay, let me put it this way: your free market solution, which is not a solution at all.
Doesn't matter.
It's the far right position.
Yes,
the individual mandate is the right wing position.
Right wing? How is it the right wing if it's not? Okay. If the far right is the free market, then having anything less than that is to the left. To the left. It's not to the right, it is towards the left. Because going towards the right would be towards more freer markets. Ugh. It's not a hard concept.
I think you're having a hard time understanding the concept of, far right, center right.
No.
left.
Okay, prior to the individual mandate, we had more of a free market. Therefore, including the individual mandate means it's away from the far right being free markets. It is more towards the left. And you are saying it is right-wing.
A right-wing proposal.
It's the opposite of a right-wing proposal if it's more towards the left than what we had previously.
Okay,
Oh,
so
oh my God! It's like anything that's not far right is like left
No.
wing.
A right-wing proposal would be something that takes us from where we are closer to the right wing, not something that takes us from where we are more towards the left or more towards the center.
okay, what point would you both define? For instance, you got far left, moderate left, center, center right, moderate right, far right. At what point would it be a single issue or a combination of issues? Would you
No.
say would bring you over to any of those positions I just
All
described?
right. So before we answer that, let me clarify here. So if what we had prior to the the mandate, or sorry, the individual mandate, if what we had prior to that was center right, then the individual mandate would be left of right, but still on the right. And then having a more free system would be to the right of center on the right. And then having single payer healthcare would be to the right of the left. That doesn't. Okay, so what? So I've established those positions, right? How is going from center right to left of right moving towards the right? That doesn't. That's what I'm trying to establish here.
I have no idea what the hell you're babbling on about. I mean, yeah, this is not a hard concept to understand.
Okay.
The individual mandate system is the right wing's alternative to the left wing solution to healthcare, which is a single payer healthcare system.
And it's more towards the left than what right wingers would want. That's
well, actually,
two different conversations here?
a lot of right wingers here in America, well, quote unquote right wingers here in America, would actually are in favor of a Medicare for all system, which is a single payer healthcare system.
Okay, so that means this is a right wing position. That's what makes it. Oh fucking A, man. It's
okay. Let me put it this way: the public option.
Right wingers do it, therefore it is right wing.
No,
That's
the public option is a centrist position. Yeah. All right.
So
the individual mandate is right wing single, and the many different flavors of single payer is on the left wing, and there's many different flavors of single payer.
It's not the argument, but whatever.
What single payer healthcare system do like which one? The UK one or the Canadian one?
The UK one, I believe, is where like everything is managed by the government. You know, not just like paying for the bills, but the hospitals, the doctors. I'd say that's like the furthest left you can go. Really, on that issue is where everything is taken care of by the government. I'd be fine. I'd be perfectly okay with a single payer system where where the government basically replaces the job of the insurance companies, where all they do is just pay for and negotiate the bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into because I know there's different flavors, to put it that way, of single payer. I'll look into those later. And yeah, I do agree with him. There are different flavors of the right wing and the left wing.
I never denied that.
Well, I'm not saying you denied that. Just for the record,
it's a completely separate argument than what we were having previously. So
yeah,
it seems very non sequitur. I guess it's talking about healthcare, but it's not. If what we had previously, we have gone to the left of what we had, doesn't make sense to call that a right wing position. If it is to the left of what previously existed. A right-wing position would be to the right of what we previously had.
Okay, let me put it this way: the system we had before was almost the furthest right wing you can go. Okay.
Yes. So any advancement.
So it was
to the
a
left
far right position. The right wing position would be, just moving slightly to the left and having an individual mandate system, still solidly on the right. All right.
Okay, so giving. Okay, let's see. Trying to come up with a good analogy. Okay, so
I mean, I don't know what kind of analogy you could go
Okay,
with.
so we've got two armies, the red army versus the blue army. And all right, physical combat here, right? So let's imagine the United States is split right down the middle, 50-50, and that's what happens. And we've got the red side on the left, and then the blue is the right side of the country physically. And then the left side, actually let's switch them around. So let's say blue is on the left, red is on the right, because that makes more sense given Republican. Yeah. So, all right. So the left side of the United States, imagine if it was all blue, and the line is down the middle. Okay, and you're saying, okay, that would be a 50-50 split. All right, so if that line moves and now a quarter of the country, or no, let's make it the other way, sorry. So half the country, 50-50, right? I already established that.
This analogy has gotten
dude,
extremely complicated and meandering and impossible to understand.
Okay,
let me give you an
analogy.
Fuck
you for 5 seconds, man.
Hey,
5 seconds.
let me
Shut
give
the
you
fuck
an
up.
analogy.
Okay, let me get my analogy. Okay, so imagine the country is 75% Republican and 25% Democrats. And then now it's 30% Democrats and 70% Republicans, and you're saying that is a move towards the right wing. That doesn't fucking make any sense, because that's what you're trying to explain to me right now.
I never said it was a move towards the right wing. It's still the right wing.
It's not a right wing position to lose ground to the left. That's fucking insane.
Let me give you an analogy. Okay, you have a bucket of red paint. You take an ounce of blue paint. You pour it into the red paint. Stir it up. There's a slight tinge of blue, but it's still red paint.
Okay.
Okay, so this maybe would be an analogy you can more understand. Okay, is it a heterosexual position to only blow one guy? That's the heterosexual position. You only blew one guy, but that's the heterosexual side. It's not heterosexual to do the thing that's the opposite of that.
S-Man, it says second best humane quote of all time.
So what you're saying, Ham, is that not having sex with a woman equals abortion? I'm sorry, you mean that's just fucking... That's gold.
No. Yeah, so I came up with an analogy, and I think that exactly makes sense. Is Ham is trying to argue that, well, they did blow a guy, but that's a heterosexual position. And you're like, no, that's a step towards not heterosexuality.
Oh my god.
But going back to what I said, I think my red paint analogy is really accurately describes the individual German system. Yeah.
So it's a bit
slightly to the left
of
right wing.
How is it? Okay, so in your paint analogy, the paint is now more. It's more blue than red, because if it was red paint, you had a drop of blue.
No, it's a bucket. It's a 5-gallon bucket of red paint, and you take a few ounces of blue paint.
Yes.
There's a little bit of blue in there, but it's still red paint.
Mm-hmm.
Then how is that a red position? That's in between red and red blue, or it's in between red and blue. It's in between the two.
It's way more red than it is blue.
Who cares? It's in between red and blue. It's moved towards blue, not towards red.
It's purple.
Wait! If you put a few ounces of blue paint into a 5-gallon bucket of red paint, that is now blue paint.
No, it's closer to blue than it is to red. It's closer to being blue than it is to being. I guess that's
remaining.
a good way of saying it. It has now moved closer to blue than it was when it started.
But it's still red.
Okay, 5 gallons of paint, of red paint, and a few drops of blue paint. It's still overwhelmingly
red. Yes,
yeah,
but to say that it is red, like it's a
Purely?
It doesn't quite work with paint because you're saying a red wing position or a red position would be, no, red wants to make everything red, not make everything red with a tint of blue.
Make
But
it
it's still red.
But it's conceded ground in...
That doesn't make it blue!
Okay. I'm not saying it makes it blue, you fucking idiot. I'm saying the red position would be to be entirely red. The blue position would be to be entirely blue. Now, having a bit of blue in red is good for blue. Having a bit of red in blue is good for red. But to say that having a bit of blue in red is good for red doesn't make any fucking sense.
Nothing you just said right now makes any fucking sense.
It made sense to me. Like
A big mess of red paint with a tiny traces of blue in it.
Okay, is that good for red? It's still red, but is that good for red? To be not...
What?
Hey, I'm chill.
Is that what red wants? If red is what... Because the paint analogy doesn't quite work.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the mental tap dance of humane mind.
It's not. No, fuck you with your mental tap dance.
Oh my.
Okay. Okay. If the ideal position for a Republican is to be on the right, and the ideal position for somebody who is a Democrat is to be on the left, it would be a failure of a Democrat to move more towards the right, and it would be a failure of a Republican to move more towards the left. And that's exactly what you're describing here, is a Republican position that has moved more towards the left, which is a failure of right-wing policy, and you are saying that it is right-wing. No, it's a failure of right-wing.
But they're not... the individual mandate system is not on the left.
I didn't say it was on the left, you fucking idiot. Maybe that's the problem. I'm not saying it is on the left. It is more right-wing than right. Or, sorry, it is more left-wing than it is right-wing. That's fucking A.
I'm going to pull up
It is more towards the left than what the ideal right-wing position would be.
There are other ideals of right-wing than just free market anarcho-capitalism.
Then they're not right-wing. Those are left-wing. If they're not more towards the ideal of the right, then they are more towards the ideal of the left.
Okay, I'm gonna pull up a political.
S-Man, I literally found the right wing version of Owen McDonald.
Oh damn! I wouldn't slam the shithouse door that hard, but I mean, whatever.
No.
Anyway,
Owen McDonald is someone that, you know, if you're a capitalist in any stretch of the imagination, you're suddenly a right winger.
Let's look at this chart, right? So let's.
No,
imagine...
I am not saying it is left wing, you fucking idiot. Okay.
Let's look at a chart. Let's look at this chart. So HUMANe, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the ideal position, like on this line here, or would it be around here?
But the bottom right corner, that's where I would say is the ideal for me.
So imagine if, because last I checked, I was right around this area. Ham is right around, I'd say around, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd be around.
-6 -6.25 and -6.
So, yeah, somewhere around this general area. But so HUMANE is to the right of me. I'm moderately on the right, but does this make me more to the left? Well, like I'm to the left of you, but that doesn't make me left wing.
To the left of me. I'm not saying you are left wing.
Okay.
I'm not saying you haven't crossed that line into the left wing. But to say that moving more towards the left is a right-wing position is a problem.
It can't be a problem because you are still on the right.
Okay.
I, having a Medicare for all or a public option system is not a problem for me, because even though it's not my perfect ideal
Yes,
system
it is
of
a win for
healthcare,
you.
it is still a massive improvement in
Yes.
my opinion.
Oh my god.
Which
I'm
maybe we are using different definitions when we're talking about position, right wing position. You mean right wing position as in it's on the right side of the scale, as opposed to a right wing position as in this is something they hold as a value or as something that right wing should be in pursuit of. Like position as in a policy, or position as in technically it's still on the right.
I love that picture that S-Man has.
I'm just looking at this. I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at? Hillary in the 90s, Jews, democratic socialism. Give me free stuff. Would you like some maple syrup with a healthcare A? Edward Snowden, taxation is theft.
And the very bottom, the purge.
I like this one too. Buy immigrants, buy immigrants, buy immigrants, and buy immigrants.
That's awesome.
I'm sorry. This does not watch anime. Okay, this I think we can all agree on.
Yeah, pretty much. It's surprising how much the Nazis love the Japanese and their anime. I mean, Richard Spencer on that fucking hangout with Andy Worski goes on to bash the NFL but praise anime. Jesus Christ.
The cause of death on the planet is anime. Everywhere else in the universe doesn't have anime, is 0 deaths. Therefore, anime is to blame, everyone. And obviously I'm joking, but...
No, I think there's a direct correlation between anime and getting a nuke dropped on you, right? Countries that invented anime. If you do a Venn diagram, countries that invented anime, and then countries that have had nuclear bombs dropped on them, boom, big overlap there. Countries that didn't invent anime, and countries that had bombs dropped on them.
I got a question.
Not so much.
I got a question. Did the nukes make the anime problem in Japan worse, or did it prevent it from getting as bad as it could have been?
This is the philosophical question of today's issues.
I don't know. There's already tentacle porn, and then and a whole lot of chicks with dicks in anime. So I think that nuclear bombs may not have been enough to stop it.
2 nukes weren't enough, Truman.
Hey, what about the Germans and their Scheiser porn?
Oh God.
Yeah. Why did they get a nuke?
Which is worse, German Scheiser porn or Japanese tentacle hentai?
The German stuff, because it's not a cartoon. Those are actual real people that had to do that.
Yeah. Hey, Ham. What is your thoughts of this map right here?
The Bush, Rubio, Cruz, libertarians. Jesus Christ, no. They go to authoritarian right. I don't know about Webb. I sincerely doubt he's on the left. Clinton, definitely not on the left. Definitely, I put her higher on the authoritarian scale, and I put her maybe just a little bit towards the left of Trump. Sanders, hell nah. He's down here. He's down in the left libertarian area. Only a few blocks down.
Yeah. Let me see.
But basically, put Sanders on the left libertarian centrist area, and everyone else on the extremely authoritarian right wing area.
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is the 2012 election. So this is Jill Stein, Rocky Anderson, who came from my home state, Gary Johnson, Mitt Romney, and Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, which there was basically no difference between them, and then Virgil Goode.
Oh, wait, what?
Hey, go back to that previous one. That you right there, that's about where I am.
Okay.
That doesn't make any sense.
I thought you were at least to this general, like round here.
I used to be around that area, but I've since kind of drifted even further to the left and down to the libertarian area.
Yeah, okay, so looking at that previous chart, how are they making that determination that Barack Obama is that far to the right?
I think they may have made this determination.
Here's why. The many economically right-wing positions that Obama has held, the many foreign interventions that he's done, literally running out of bombs, bombing Libya.
Okay. What about this map? How does this look, Ham?
Yeah, again, that goes back to apparently.
I wouldn't quite put the Republicans quite that far on the authoritarian right-wing scale. Maybe a little drifting, little down south.
So
south
right
west.
Yeah, so getting back to the statement you were just making. So anybody who is in favor of war is on the right. Anybody who isn't in favor of war is on the left. So Ron Paul is on the left because he was against foreign interventions and being for war. So he's obviously a left-winger according to you, as opposed to being
he's a left.
right-wing.
He's more towards the left when it comes to foreign policy.
Oh, now you understand more towards the left. Okay. So that instead of him being a far right wing position to not want to be in wars, you're saying that is a more toward the left than most Republicans.
Yeah, it isn't left more about diplomacy and the right
Well,
more
that's
about.
As far as I can tell, it's not. It doesn't seem to be a left wing or right wing position to be in favor because both parties are in favor of war. Both parties favor the war machine. How is that a left-wing or a right-wing position if both parties are doing it? That's what I don't get.
Well, you have to differentiate the parties from the actual political scale. Both parties.
Okay, now you want to make that distinction. Gotcha. Okay.
I've always made that distinction.
You weren't making it earlier when you're talking about party policy versus what the actual left and right represent, but.
I have no idea what to tell you. You're confusing.
Hey,
how about this map?
It's like goldfish memory over there. Because
does this map look accurate to you, Ham?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, economically speaking, what Barack Obama campaigned on, I think would have made him way more to the left than like John McCain. But he didn't really like some of this shit. Yeah, I think he did advocate for single-payer health care, if I'm not mistaken, in his 2008 campaign. But that shit went away.
Actually, Barack Obama never campaigned for single-payer or any kind of Medicare for all system. He campaigned for a universal healthcare system, which can include anything from single-payer to the individual mandate system.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard people mix up the term single payer and universal health care a lot. Which to me at least from what I've understood, it doesn't seem to be a huge difference, but I'll just let the people use the terms they want and hopefully they can get a single definition of what they want. But I will say that by 2012, I think Obama, I think he had to kind of abandon some of the ideas based on the obstruction he faced during his presidency, and I think he may have moved a little towards the right, not like this huge, like he moved to like ANCAP territory, but I think he probably did move a little to the right.
The problem with Obama was he's a weak ass president when it came to dealing with the Republicans.
Yeah,
Obamacare ended up being was a compromise between what currently existed and what Obama wanted, because he was not satisfied with what was labeled as Obamacare. He wanted something closer to what Bernie Sanders and what Hillary were later advocating for, which is closer to single payer or universal or whatever you want to call it. To me, there's no difference between universal and single payer, but I don't know why you think that individual mandate is a part of universal health care, because it's not, given the definition of universal care. But they settled for the individual mandate because it was still a win for them, because it was more towards their position than what was previously out there. The Republicans just lost
settled
ground on it.
That I agree with you that the individual mandate was a compromise, because Obamacare started off as a compromise. It started off as a public option.
Yes.
If it started off with a single payer system, like the furthest left you can go, maybe it would balanced out more towards the an actual compromise, which would be like a public option or a single payer. But
okay,
it's replacing insurance companies, not the entire healthcare system.
Okay, so let's say that there is a compromise, and granted, Ham, you probably won't understand this analogy. So there's a girl at a bar, and then there's a guy who wants to rape her. And so then the guy proposes, hey, I'm going to rape you, you can't do anything to stop it. And she's like, no, that's not right. And then eventually she settles for letting him buy her a drink, and then they go back to her place, and then she feels miserable the next day because she didn't want to sleep with the guy, but she did. How is that? That's, to me, the compromise of this situation, is Barack Obama wanted something that I think was akin to raping the United States population, and the United States was kind of like, the Republicans were kind of like, no, you don't get to rape us, but we'll make a compromise of sleeping with you and then regretting it. And you're like...
So universal health care is akin to rape to you.
Oh, yes.
Hey, S-Man... I think that qualifies as the second best quote from HUMANE of all time.
Well, if it was voluntary, people would do it of their own accord instead of being forced into it.
I would say
that it is voluntary. In fact, 70% of Americans want a Medicare for all type system.
No. See, that they want universal health care for other people. If they want to do universal health care for them, fine. They can do that. Everybody who wants universal health care, if they all join in a pool together, they can do that. They can do that right now under our current system. What they can't do is force everybody who doesn't want to participate in universal health care to join their freaking system.
Ham, are you checking the...
And that's a problem for them.
Are you checking the live chat, Ham?
No. Let me see.
Darkon's made a couple comments. He says, chicks with dicks, Ham would love. He then says Mitt Romney and Obama being in the same camp. Yeah, I might as well have supported Obama in both elections. Rolls eyes. I just give the benefit of the doubt that right equals war and left equals peace. Then he says, I think that if there's still ever a private option for people to pay for their own health care, then it's not truly single payer, he says.
Yeah, so Obamacare is not single payer. I don't think anybody argued for that.
No, I never argued that Obamacare is single payer. It's not single payer.
But you said that it fell under universal care, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it gives universal health care coverage to the entire country. It's not the government paying for health care. That's what a single payer healthcare system is, a single payer. The government.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also called universal healthcare. System that provides healthcare and financial protection to all citizens in a particular country.
So, while Humane's doing that, how have you been today, Ham?
Making sure that my definition isn't incorrect here. But...
So you doing all right?
I'm doing all right. I actually, my new headphones came in the mail today.
Oh, cool. What do they look like?
It's the ATH M50X.
Okay. How does my microphone sound? I've listened to it, and it's from what I sound on streams and videos. It sounds okay.
It's a lot better than just the mic on earbuds, but it
Yeah.
does sound a little harsh.
True.
Okay.
But
So, I just want
yeah.
to specify. So this, I'm trying to make sure that I'm using the correct definition, and as far as I could tell, I was. And this is from the Wikipedia. It is described by the World Health Organization as a situation where citizens can access health services without incurring financial hardship. That's how is forcing someone to pay for insurance not incurring financial hardship. I don't understand how you can say that universal health care includes the individual mandate when the individual mandate is forcing someone to pay, which is exact opposite of what universal health care is supposed to include.
You couldn't be looking up the Wikipedia definition, because Wikipedia says universal health care, also called universal health coverage, universal care, or socialized health care, is a health care system that provides health care and financial protection to all citizens of a particular country.
That's the first sentence, you moron. Man, what do you have, like a second grade reading level? I am in the second paragraph reading, it's described by World Health Organization. Go to that section. It's citation number 2. Citation number 2.
Ignore one definition.
No,
in favor of another definition.
That's not a different definition, you moron. The first one is describing what it is. The second one is saying what it is not. Right? So this would exclude the individual mandate. This particular section, it doesn't change the definition. It's not a completely separate definition from universal health care. It's a clarification on what that is.
I'm not even. I don't care about your nuanced trolling with definitions. Okay. The individual mandate system is intended to give universal health care coverage.
Can access health services without incurring financial hardship. That means they've got financial protection and health care, and it doesn't cost them extra. It's not a burden on them. It's not a hardship on them. Forcing somebody to pay for something they wouldn't otherwise purchase is a financial hardship.
Yeah, that's your nuanced trolling definition that I don't even care about.
Yeah, okay.
All right?
Nuanced trolling is being accurate with what you're talking about. So.
Yeah, quote unquote accurate.
Anyhow,
that's from the fucking okay. So so either you disagree with Wikipedia's article or you disagree with what is financial
How am I
hardship.
disagreeing? Universal health care is a healthcare system that provides health care and financial protection to all citizens of a particular country.
Yeah,
that's the broad definition of universal health care.
Yeah, and does it say that people have to pay for that? No, it specifically says the opposite of it.
Well, what part of healthcare system that provides healthcare and financial protection to all citizens of a particular country implies that the citizens don't pay for the healthcare?
The part where it says that it doesn't incur financial hardship. That part.
What part? Well, what part of healthcare system that provides healthcare and financial protection to all citizens of a particular country implies financial hardship?
It doesn't need to imply that.
Yeah.
Because it's stated later on in the second paragraph.
It's stated later on when it's going into more details and expanding.
That's how things work.
How other people interpret it.
That's how encyclopedia articles work. They don't cram the entire definition of something in one single sentence.
You're literally just citing one organization as a source.
All right, let's see if I can.
Oh my god, I do not give a fuck.
This is pointless, but
about your
you're wrong
trolling.
on the definition of universal healthcare. That's
how am I fucking wrong? It's literally the first fucking sentence of the entire Wikipedia article on universal healthcare.
Also,
and it
this
doesn't
is like
say that it doesn't say whether it is free or paid for by the people in that first sentence. You are implying that it can be both, when later on it specifically says, no, it's not supposed to incur any extra financial hardship.
According as described by the World Health Organization.
Which would be one of the, right? So their definition is wrong. So the World Health Organization is wrong on this.
That's their interpretation, jackass.
Let me look at this myself.
The definition I'm using is the broad, generalized description of what universal healthcare is.
Going to the actual World Health Organization and ignoring ham, universal health coverage means that all people and community can use the promotive, preventive, curative, rehabilitative, and wow, that's a new word. Palliative health services. Palliative?
I don't know.
Health services they need of sufficient quality to be effective, while also ensuring that the use of these services does not expose the user to financial hardship. So that's the World Health Organization directly, but you don't agree with that at all. So let's see. Let's go Investopedia.
Oh my God!
Healthcare coverage refers to systems in which all legal residents are given jurisdiction, have health care.
I'm not gonna even entertain Humane's nuance trolling right now.
You can call it nuance trolling all you want, but you're wrong. That's what it means. Is you're wrong based on the definition of these multiple sources.
Anyhow,
the definition that I was using once again is a broad, generalized description of what a universal healthcare system is.
Where did you get it from? Like, what website did you use, for the record?
What I use?
Yeah, Ham.
Literally the first sentence of the Wikipedia article on universal healthcare.
All right. Anyhow, since this would go in circles. So, So could you tell me this, Ham? Why do you support single payer over universal healthcare? Out of curiosity.
That's like saying, why do I fuck apes instead of just humans? Single payer healthcare is one of the flavors of universal healthcare.
Okay, never mind. All right. But what did you, before you got into the whole single payer healthcare thing, or whatever you want to call it? What were you for in healthcare? Did you support Obamacare or something like that?
I don't know what. I don't think there was a healthcare system that I supported. This was like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was just like, "Oh, I hate Obamacare because it's evil. It's the individual mandate system, and it's evil."
Yeah, he hadn't been properly indoctrinated yet.
How could I be indoctrinated into anything when I was the one doing the research myself? I grew up in a right-wing household. I grew up watching Fox News. I grew up watching all the, far-right propaganda against Obamacare.
Okay. I grew up in a rather moderate household. We would watch and listen to CNN and a little bit of Fox News, but in the sense of like my hometown's version of it. So it was rather moderate, so I'd hear both sides all the time. But I grew up rather kind of left-leaning anyway. All right, so...
Okay, so this is Business Dictionary, and I will link this in the chat. Form of health insurance that provides to citizens of a country at no charge. That's obviously, that's incorrect, because it Man, so I've got at least 3 sources that all disagree with Ham's definition of universal healthcare, and I'm trying to find others, but most of the time they just talk about it without actually giving a definition. That's a bit odd.
Okay.
So there's the Wikipedia, the Investopedia, the WHO. Well, Investopedia doesn't give it doesn't give a full definition of it. It gives the one sentence that's basically the copy of.
Okay, let me point something else out. Like how Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez confuse themselves for socialists when they're actually social democrats. People also confuse universal health care for single-payer health care. And that's what I'm assuming that HUMANE and these other business dictionaries are doing.
Because they are the same thing.
They're not.
Yeah, you said earlier that single payer is a flavor of universal healthcare, right?
Yes, as is the public option, as is the individual mandate. It is designed to give universal healthcare coverage. The very words in the term you're using describe what it is.
Okay, so according to Investopedia, so I'll link this as well.
Oh God! Let's move on. I do not care.
This system is similar to the one established by the 2010 Affordable Care Act, more commonly known as Obamacare, but the U.S. has not achieved universal health care coverage, and many people who do not have insurance can barely afford it. So,
oh my God! Obamacare is not perfect.
I'm not saying it's not perfect. Flawed. I'm just saying it's not universal health care like you claim it is. It doesn't fall under the definition.
Oh my God. What it intends to do and what it actually does are 2 different things.
Okay, like Ham has said, I think it's appropriate to just move on. This is going to go in circles. So what other topics
okay.
Like, because I think just for your...
this is going to credibility, and that's what I'm trying to establish here. So, I went to a fairly credible source that is usually reliable for most topics of Wikipedia. So, Wikipedia, because it's an amalgamation of other sources, usually has some decent information. Although, from what I understood, you still can't use Wikipedia as a source when you're writing a report for school and all that sort of thing. But you can use Wikipedia as a starting point because Wikipedia links to its sources, and then you go to those original sources and you can cite those.
Yeah.
Now, what I also did is I went to various other sources. I'm like, okay, maybe Wikipedia's entry was skewed, and maybe my understanding of what universal healthcare is wrong. And so I started going through the list, trying to find other definitions and other examples that would clarify the situation. And the more I'm seeing, I'm finding there's 4 or 5 of them that I went through on my list all agree that it has to be provided free of charge or without incurring financial hardship on the people who receive it. And with Obamacare, with the single payer or with the individual mandate, doesn't fit that definition because a lot of people have either had to avoid getting insurance and just paid the penalty, or they got insurance that they didn't want or didn't need, and that incurred other financial hardships on them because they couldn't afford the one they got, but they had to in order to avoid the fee, and then they couldn't afford the other stuff that they wanted. So that is a hardship. I don't know how else you could slice that. If it wasn't a hardship, they would have done it voluntarily. It's like if you really enjoy ice cream, nobody has to hold a gun to your head and force you to eat ice cream. If it's something you are going to do anyway, you don't need to force somebody to do it. If something like going to work is something that you wouldn't do unless there was a paycheck at the other end. But to point a gun to someone's head and tell them to go to work, but you're paying them to do it, but you had to hold a gun to their head, and you're like, that is a hardship. if you had to hold a gun to their head and force them to go to work and then pay them and act like you did them a favor.
The penalty for lack of healthcare is death. Your cancer will be treated under threat of death. Your flu shots will be paid for by the government. Under.
What the fuck are you doing?
You're doing. I don't know. I guess it's Jesse Ventura.
I don't know. I'm just going with some like some evil judge voice, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
Judge
that
Anyway, it's that going to credibility, citing multiple sources. If multiple sources all agree and have a similar understanding, then you're more likely to be correct.
Okay,
but if you've only got a single source, you could have gotten that single source that is wrong. This is why anecdotal evidence is not.
How do you differentiate universal healthcare coverage from single-payer healthcare?
I don't. To me, they're the exact same thing. The differences are so minimal, it's not even worth. It's like the differences between socialism and communism. I'm like, why bother making that distinction? They both end up with the same results.
Yeah.
It's a distinction without a difference.
I'm Judge Dredd according to Darky Khan.
Oh my fucking god, Ham. Hold
Yeah, well, you don't show your face, and you also, you want to be judge, jury, and executioner.
Well, I mean, at least I have an excuse for not showing my face. I don't have a webcam yet. What's your excuse? Half your fucking chin is like hidden.
So I was slumped down in my chair, and so that's the same thing as hiding my face. Oh no, half my chin, you can't tell who I am, and I don't.
I always get a kick out of people who have like, don't center their fucking webcam. It bothers me.
Honestly, Leafy was the biggest offender of that shit. That dude was such a massive pussy. He'd hide behind his microphone and be this absurdly large microphone in the pop filter. He'd do the stupid
now. He has an excuse, okay? He has a pathetic excuse for a chin. I would hide that if I had a chin like that.
Okay, fair enough. I think he'd get a strike if he showed his chin. Let's be fair.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So when there's a single source of something, that can be a problem. This is why anecdotal evidence is not very good evidence, because you can cite a single source and saying, "Well, I never had to do that." I'm like, "So what? Millions of people have. You might be that one exception." So this is a very bad argument that people make, because they're talking about this is an argument that was made in Barbara for you to see when she was talking about immigrants in Slovenia and how the number of migrants going to Slovenia has gone up very rapidly this last year. And there's people posting in the comments, "Well, I haven't seen any new immigrants." And you're like, that's not an argument, because that's like, well, maybe you're in an area where the immigrants aren't moving to. The migrants aren't moving to your area, so it's not like I didn't see them, therefore they don't exist. And like, that's a stupid argument, because other people have, and the police have been documenting this. So your personal experience is undermined by all the other people who have seen them. So you can't say, "Oh, I've never seen them, therefore you can take my word that they aren't coming in. There aren't more of them coming into the country this year." I'm like, the police reported it, various news outlets have been reporting it, individual people in areas have been reporting it. Your one single source doesn't stack up against the counter evidence. So that's why anecdotal evidence is not really credible, and you have to get as much corroborating evidence, or as much evidence that is what's the word I'm looking for?
Masturbation?
No.
Wait, what the fuck? I just came back. What the fuck? Jesus Christ. What
So
the
either
fuck?
either enough other people agreeing with your position that I haven't seen any immigrants, you haven't seen it, all of us haven't seen any immigrants, there's no new evidence, the police aren't reporting it. If that was the case, well then you could say, okay, well we're pretty confident that the number of immigrants is about the same as it was last year. But if all of these other people are disagreeing with you, you got to think, okay, maybe my personal account should be thrown out as the exception to the rule rather than the rule. And even that has some problems because there are consensus. That's the word I'm looking for. Consensus. So consensus can also be incorrect. So consensus, while it is a better barometer, is like, okay, you said something, check to see if there's a consensus about what you said, and if the consensus is against you, double check your position to make sure that you're not in the wrong. Because sometimes the consensus is wrong. And so this is what we started to see with mainstream media, because if you were using mainstream media as your consensus, then Donald Trump is definitely the worst president we have ever had, the worst ruler of any country, worse than Hitler, worse than Saddam Hussein, worse than Mao, worse than Nero. He's the absolute worst person ever alive, but that's if you're using mainstream media as your consensus. But if that consensus
I'm black.
You're black? Okay, yeah. If that consensus is contrary to the evidence, then that consensus doesn't apply.
Mm-hmm.
So in the case of universal
of course you won't
healthcare-
see immigrants in Sweden. They have concentration camps.
Sweden.
What? Oh.
They're
this was
bringing back the final solution.
No, this was Slovenia. They've seen a tripling in the amount of migrants moving to their country in the last year. So it's gone up 3 times and expected to go up even more in the next few years. Because basically,
did you hear
migrants
about
have
the
oversaturated
mass
the
stabbing in
country.
Paris? Luckily, no Frenchmen were harmed.
Did they scream surrender? Ah, fuck it.
Okay, you didn't get my joke. Did you hear about the mass stabbing in Paris? Luckily, no Frenchmen were harmed.
Oh, okay.
Because Paris has a whole lot of immigrants in it.
Oh.
I thought you were making a joke about how they're not really men. Those were just, those weren't real Frenchmen.
Well, that goes
It's
without
just women
saying.
and children, and then guys that claim to be men. Anyway.
Ham's black? Okay, then I'm transgender, says DarkCon. The Dark Tranitarian, everybody.
Oh, God.
I can just see it. I can picture that, and I wish I didn't, because I would need to steal some of Lonely Wolf's eye bleach and Humane's mind bleach.
Yeah, I am all out of mind bleach. Oh, well.
Isn't that just called double up fuck?
No, because that would also just flat out kill you. Anyway.
Well, wouldn't bleach just kill you?
It'd make you want to die.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
The idea is to get rid of the bad, but keep as much of the good as possible, right?
There is no good, only bad.
Yeah, and so if anybody else is watching this in the comments, and if you've got a definition that matches Ham that says, oh yeah, by the way, it also includes people having to pay for their universal health care, then yes, feel free to put that in the chats. But from what I can tell, from clicking on multiple sources, going through the first full page, anytime there was a definition where they talked about specifically universal health care, it seemed to match what I was saying about universal health care. But, that's...
By the way, what the hell were y'all talking about before I showed up? I heard Ted Cruz getting mentioned.
Okay, so here's what was happening. So we were talking about the media in general and their credibility and how public confidence in the media has declined. We then briefly mentioned polls. There's a lot of polls saying Ted Cruz is a very vulnerable incumbent Republican senator in a very Republican state. That is how we got into the topic of polls and everything, is to mention credibility and the credibility of polls. That was what we were talking about.
Yeah, because
Well, I think a really good example to talk about the credibility of polls is with the 2016 presidential election.
yeah,
Yeah.
polls were way off.
Oh yeah.
No. The polls were spot on. They were accurate to the to what the popular vote turned out to be. It was just Trump won the certain states. It was because of the Electoral College and Trump winning the proper states
to win the
they gave
presidency.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I look at the polls. There were some polls Hillary Clinton led by, she would win the poll decisively, like around 50-55%. Then there's polls where she had under 40%, but she was still leading, and then there was polls that she was losing in. Yeah, they were correct that she would win the popular vote, but they were wrong, and I've seen various electoral maps. They were wrong that she would carry Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and Iowa, and Florida. So in the electoral vote they were fucking wrong, but in the popular vote they were right. She did win, but by just like over 2% in a plurality.
Yeah.
I think
that,
3 million votes will be up with a lot.
If they incorrectly predicted the outcome, they were wrong. I don't get.
Well, they correctly predicted the popular vote, how the people had voted. They didn't take into consideration, or at least probably most of them, probably didn't take into consideration the makeup of the electoral vote.
Yeah, I would say that in certain states that they rated safely Democratic, they were wrong. I would say that they were right that they were wrong in how they predicted the general election would go in terms of who would actually just straight up win the presidency. But if they were trying to predict popular vote, they were right. But yeah, I agree. 3 million votes is decisive. It's a decisive win. But neither candidate had like a majority of the vote. She had only 48% to his 46%.
Yeah.
Dark Khan puts it. He hits the nail on the head. He says polls were right, but on a national scale, but they were wrong on a state-by-state basis, and it was very true. They were pretty spot on, nationally, but in terms of the state-by-state basis, they fucked up.
And some of the states that Trump won,
very narrowly.
Very narrowly. I mean, that'd be well within the margin of error of most of these polls.
Yeah. Some of these he won. I think under 1% of the popular vote, and I think it was Wisconsin and or Michigan were the closest actually, and those were some states that she would have really needed to have in her column to win.
Yeah, and those were the states where she didn't even visit at all.
That to me that's why she lost, is because she did not visit. She did visit Pennsylvania, but I don't think she did enough.
Yeah, it was the Rust Belt that lost her the vote.
Yeah, and she lost Florida extremely closely, actually. You just look at the county by county basis; it's very thin margins of victory for both.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So some states, if like 0.5% either showed up or went a different direction, I mean, we'd be saying President Hillary. Ugh.
Yeah. So Darkon also says, "Hey Ham, at least you can have a debate with HUMANe." Owen would just be like, "S-man, kick him out. He's awful. Wah, XD."
Oh my God! How dare HUMANe, S-man, platform the racist cult of harm.
Wait, is he from the UK or is he Scottish Southern?
Oh God, I was doing the Scottish accent
with like a bit of Southern draw in there. I'm like Foghorn Leghorn and let's see who's Scottish. So if Braveheart and Foghorn Leghorn were fucked, I guess that would be Ham.
How dare you make fun of my ancestors? They are proud to fuck their cousins.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah. Basically, HUMANe. This dude is cult of the forbidden word.
Gotcha. So going back to the polls, like, I get that it's within the margin of error. Okay, that's the
I mean,
only thing that seems to actually make sense. Actually, be like, okay, that's a valid point when you're talking about all of this. Yes, it could. All of them was in the margin of error.
Well, it breaks down like this. Most of them were right. A lot of them were within the margin of error.
I
some
disagree
of them
with
were
the
wrong.
most of them were right. Like I get okay, the margin of error, yes, that makes perfect sense if the results were in the margin of error. The problem was that people were taking the polls as they were and deciding it was Hillary won definitively. And I'm like, well, if you account for the margin of error, no, it's close enough where it's not a definitive win, and yet people were touting them as if it was a definitive win. But I disagree with you saying that they were right when that doesn't.
Like they were wrong in
Well,
predicting.
it was primarily the Rust Belt that lost her to victory. If she won the Rust Belt, Clinton would be president.
Yeah, I get you, but I mean, and my mom makes a similar kind of argument. She's like, well, I could do all the mathematics right. It's just I would get the wrong answer because I added or subtracted incorrectly when doing complex math problems. I'm like, you still got the wrong answer. You did it wrong. In order for it to be right, it has to be the right method and also the right, and also everything has to be done accurately to get the accurate results. It doesn't matter if I did all the methods correctly.
I think we need to differentiate what polls are we talking about exactly.
And what are they trying to predict?
Well, you say that they got the popular vote correctly, but the purpose of these polls is not to predict the popular vote. It's to predict who's going to be president. And if they didn't accurately predict that, then they failed. If this was a math problem, they would get zero credit for their polls.
Well, what polls exactly were predicting, who would be president? Are you talking about like the?
That's the entire purpose of these polls.
Let me see the polling.
Are you talking about the the Huffington Post polls where they were just outright stating 100% chance of Hillary winning or shit like that?
I'm gonna go to Real Clear Politics. Let's see what they have to say. Actually,
Okay.
I'll go with them.
I mean, the polls, unless the polls can account.
I thought we were talking about the same types of polls because you said that they accurately predicted the popular vote, which I'm not disputing here. But they got the whole purpose of this is to figure out, okay, can we accurately predict who's going to be the next president?
All right, let's check this out. It's supposed
to give us a
So
the polls can be correct, but the interpretation can be wrong. Can we agree on that?
Not,
I guess. I mean,
everything the poll does was done in the most correct manner it could be done, and it turns out to be correct. But if you go from this population will vote this way, so therefore Hillary will be president. I mean, there's a bit of a gap in between.
I understand what you're saying there, but based on what you're talking about, is these polls, the goal of these polls is to predict the outcomes of elections. That's the purpose of them. But if they're only sometimes right, or they're just as likely to be incorrect or incorrectly predict, because what he's showing right there is the polls and who predicted that Hillary would win and by how much, and the polls that showed that Trump would win. And the number of polls that say Hillary would win by, there's a lot more blue on that chart than there is red.
Yeah, look at these. Yeah. Some of these show they don't even get like.
Oh well, what do they mean by Trump +2 and
that's
Clinton
the mark? That's the difference.
Is it like the general election? Yeah, general election. Trump versus.
Yeah,
Trump +2, Clinton +1, Trump +3. Is that like the percent of the country?
I guess I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, this is the difference: 43 to 45 then shows her 43 to 42. You go down further, and there's varying margins. None of them have plus 10, from what I can tell. Or
Yeah,
if
there's
they
a couple
come
plus
close.
7s, plus 5s. Those are plus 8.
Found one where she gets 49 to 40
Oh,
to Trump's
yeah, there's an
38.
11, yeah.
Well, that's in New Hampshire.
Yeah, like some of these some of these polls are done in the states. I'm assuming when we're going by the states, this would be in the popular vote. So I guess in some of these states it will be via popular vote.
Look up the Rust Belt state. Let's see, Michigan, Clinton plus 5, Michigan, Trump plus 2, Pennsylvania, Trump plus 1. Scroll up to Florida.
Okay, let's go to Florida. Florida, where the fuck? Okay, here we go. Okay, Florida. So Clinton leads by 1.
Mm-hmm.
She leads by 1 again. Trump leads by 4. Then Clinton by 2. Ohio, Trump leads by 7. In North Carolina, Trump and Hillary would tie.
So, most of these polls, if they're off, they're not off by much, or they have Trump winning.
So, and some of these
don't have Trump winning. Most of them.
Well,
say
I'm talking about the states that won Trump the vote. Michigan, Florida, Ohio.
Look at this one right here. Oh wait, this is New York. What am I saying? Of course, definitely be going for Clinton.
Of course,
by 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no chance Trump is going to win New York.
Oh yeah, he lost it like decisively. I'm like, Massachusetts by 30. What a shock.
Okay.
Some of these it's like very narrow, like very close, where they nearly tie, and then there's some where they won overwhelmingly.
Yeah, Clinton plus 20, Trump plus 20, Arkansas and California.
Hillary Clinton's worst performance was my home state,
Utah.
Yeah, she didn't even get 30% of the vote. She almost placed 3rd because of a third-party candidate who actually beat her in a couple counties. Like, he placed 2nd ahead of her.
Nice.
I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty damn funny.
This is the thing, these polls, they're by and large fairly accurate. Where they are wrong, they are not wrong by much. They're within the margin of error.
Yeah, like they might be incorrect, but it's not like they predicted that Hillary Clinton was going to win 79% of the popular vote and carry like 49 states.
Well,
like
okay,
any of them say that would be stupid.
I get that the results are in the margin of error. So the problem I see here is you're looking at all this, knowing the results, and comparing that to the result to the polls. Prior to the actual election, the results were all we had, and people were operating based on the polls.
So your problem is the interpretation of these polls.
No, because the interpretation is sitting right there as these are the predicted results of the polls. That's not the interpretation.
Those are the raw numbers.
Right there. Those are the conclusions.
Those are the raw numbers. What I think you're having a problem with is the conclusions that other people would draw from these poll data.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not the interpretation. That is putting too much reliance on those as being valid predictors when clearly they are not valid predictors. They can get you kind of in the ballpark, but you can't rely on them as accurate predictions when they've been steadily wrong. Actually, the ones who have the particular polls or prediction methods that have been consistently correct predicted Trump.
Like the reason we should all have
hold the fuck on. If you're talking about Remington Research or Rasmussen, they always go for the right wing candidate even when they're clearly fucking wrong.
Okay,
I'll just say
I
this.
just said the ones that have a history of correctly predicted Trump, and then you cited one that apparently didn't have a history of correctly predicting it because you said they always predict right wing or conservative.
Which ones are you talking about that always
Um,
predictly correct the
Okay,
victor?
let me
But
see here.
I'll just
I
say
mean,
this though.
according to Real Clear Politics, I mean they were fairly spot on. If only a few of them were actually wrong or
Um,
outside the margin of error.
Hey Ham,
Okay,
do you think we should be? I think we should be skeptical of polls because there's various elections where they thought this person was going to win, and in a surprise upset, they lost.
Also, sometimes the polls can be wrong. I
Like,
mean, during the Democratic primaries, Bernie Sanders did a crushing victory over Hillary Clinton in Michigan. Yeah, Michigan. And this was a bizarre fucking out of the blue victory for Bernie. Nobody predicted this.
I will say that there's like some areas where they do polling where it's like I think they're going to be fairly right. Like if you're doing polling in the congressional district that Ocasio-Cortez is running for, I'm not going to really question if they're saying she could win in a massive landslide, like taking 60 to 70 or whatever percent of the popular vote.
Oh
Like,
yeah, Ocasio Cortez is already over the hump. She beat Joe Crowley.
yeah, by pretty handily. Like what? By 17%. That's pretty. That's pretty handily. Like,
It was that bad? Oh god.
yeah, she had 57% to I think what? Either his 40 or 43% actually.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. See, this is what happens when you get a populist left politician running against someone. It makes the other guy's job a hell of a lot more difficult. They have to spend a hell of a lot more money.
Yeah, she outspent him by like what?
Real Clear Politics predicted Ted Cruz would stand a better chance against Hillary than Trump. Jesus fucking Christ.
I mean, I know I've said this before, but I personally think that unless you are born on U.S. soil, I don't think you should be. I don't think you should have the eligibility to become president. That's just me. But yeah.
I think you have to be human to run for office.
So Ted Cruz he would be ineligible then?
So would Hillary.
You're damn right, motherfucker. Um, um,
Is Trump a human, or is he more related to an orangutan?
um, Ham, what's your opinion on Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke? How do you pronounce his name?
I'm at the point where it's literally a wet towel against Ted Cruz.
you don't like the Democratic nominee?
I really don't know much about Beto O'Rourke, but I do not like Ted Cruz at all. He's like by far one of the worst of the Republicans.
I mean, looking at the polls, and I know I'm having healthy skepticism here, but yeah, Ted Cruz. If we just look at polls, he's not looking too good. He had a better lead over O'Rourke, but as time went on, his lead narrows, and in some polls it would fall within the margin of error. In some, he's leading by 1 or 2% percentage points, and then I think there was a few, if I'm not mistaken, that actually tied.
I mean, as long as Beto O'Rourke sticks to populist left ideas when it comes to economics, he'll stand a good chance of he'll stand a good fight against Ted Cruz at least.
Yeah, like Hawk was saying, the Republicans are basically doing a rescue mission for a Republican in a southern state. I'm like that sounds like really pitiful. Just saying that sentence, like. It's like trying to rescue a Republican in Alabama, where the dude was beaten by the Democrat. The write-in votes, if they would have went to the Republican, he would have defeated Roy Moore. What the fuck, Doug Jones. It would have been a very close defeat, but it would have. I don't know if it would have been within the percentage for a recount, but he would have beaten him.
But
Okay, so I've linked several sources, but
Let's see.
Oh, there we go. One, two.
there's
Okay.
there's two of them in there.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
one talks about various methods that have correctly predicted it several terms. I mean, like several elections. It's not just one time. But if you're talking about Rasmussen and all these other polls, their track record isn't that great. Like, I think weathermen have a better accuracy than a lot of these presidential prediction polls. Whereas the list there, they've been getting it correct for like some of them for 40 plus years. That to me should mean that those are more credible when trying to figure out what's going to happen. If you're in September and you're trying to figure out, okay, who's more likely to be president, you'd consult these people. You would consult these polls and these poll results and be like, okay, it's more likely that Trump was going to win because all of these polls, all 5 of these that have a track record of being correct, predicted Trump. Whereas the mainstream media, rather than it kind of basically brushed all these things to the side until after the election, and then they're like, okay, yeah, now we can report on those things. But prior to the election, they were quoting these sources, like the other polls that you listed earlier, that overwhelmingly made it look like Hillary was going to win. You would think that prior to... so the Alan Lichtman guy was consulted, and a lot of people... But for some reason, everybody was dead certain that Clinton would win, despite the vast number of sources that have correctly predicted past presidential elections were saying Trump was going to win.
Yeah, there was a guy who.
I'm looking at the election map. There are 3 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, where Trump won by under 1%. If Hillary Clinton managed to pull those 3 states, Hillary Clinton would have been president, and they're all, and the difference is all within a single percent.
Yeah, under 1%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and if margin of error for polls is generally around 3%.
I get that, which means polls aren't reliable. They're not very credible when it comes to predicting who will be president then.
It's like a polygraph test.
What? Well, how the fuck does that make any sense?
Because the margin of error makes them less accurate than other ways of predicting presidency.
Well, what other ways of predicting presidents are there?
I just sent you links in the chat. There's the professor who has correctly predicted it for more than 30 years. There's okay.
So a single guy
who's been
who might be good at guessing. Well, what's his methodology?
I don't know. Look at it.
So you don't have ways. You have people who just happen to be
has
right.
a way. I don't know what his way is. He describes it in his book that I'm not reading just to win this fucking discussion right now. I'm not going to read his stupid book just to say, hey, this guy has a method and let me explain all of it, because he does that for me. I'm just going to say, read his book if you want to know his method. He is a professor. He's a professor of history who has correctly predicted this in the past, and he's a person that they go to and consult, like, hey, what has your method led to for this year? And it was Trump, and this is the ABC articles talking about they went to this guy after the Trump tape of Trump, grab her by the pussy came out, and they asked him, and he said, no, that didn't affect my results. I still predict a Trump presidency.
Humane. This article that you shared, the CBS News,
yes,
they cite a fucking elementary school vote.
Yeah.
The math index, a fucking monkey.
Yes.
One professor, and a fucking cup challenge.
Yep. All of those were more. Yeah.
Those are more scientific than scientific poll data.
They're more accurate. They have a better track record.
So random fucking chance is more accurate. Oh my god.
That should, if random chance, if all of those things are random chance, and the polls.
So because these polls have a margin of error of 3%.
Yes.
Suddenly they're out of the fucking water, just fucking wrong.
Well, if random chance can beat their margin of error, then yeah, they're wrong.
Are you fucking insane?
Dude, why do you care about methodology rather than the end result? You're like, oh, but they have a better methodology of predicting it. Okay, they may, but if
because the whole point of a methodology is so you can.
The whole point of it is to
understand
get results.
It and repeat it. You gotta understand what went wrong. You're literally citing a fucking monkey.
Results.
A monkey.
Yeah. Results.
A fucking monkey.
Yes.
I'm gonna keep yelling a fucking monkey until you understand the absurdity of what you're saying right now.
That should point to you to the absurdity of relying on polls, when a monkey is more accurate than polling data.
A fucking monkey.
If you were betting on who would be a president, you would have better luck betting on the choices of a monkey than what those polls were predicting for the president. If you were a betting man and you bet your entire house on who's going to win the presidency,
you would use the poll data instead of the fucking monkey.
You would be in the fucking poorhouse if you used the polls instead of the monkey. You would be the guy in Vegas who's begging at the freaking gas station because they lost all their money at the tables.
If you use the polls, you'd be less than 1% off.
You would have lost all of your money.
It doesn't matter if you fucking lost. It's how accurate you are.
You would be more accurate if you use these things that look like random chance. That's the point.
Holy shit. I got back like 30 seconds ago, and I just heard Ham yelling. Like, I got to my door, and I have like small headphones on. I could hear Ham yelling. God damn, dude. At least I can hear it with crystal clarity now.
And so
I'm a fucking monkey.
Let's apply this. So this is something that has been.
The only one of these that seems to have a methodology that's in any way
is the professor
scientific. Yeah. Is the mask index.
That's not in any way scientific, man.
Exactly.
No, the professor actually has a methodology that, hey, there's certain criteria that have a very, very high predictive rate when it comes to presidencies. And when a certain candidate meets more of those criteria, they become president. That's very scientific. Has to be. It's repeatable. It has had the same, it has had very predictive capabilities. That's scientific, man. Polls that, we're within the margin of error, but still wrong, not as accurate as these other methods. That's the point I'm trying to make here. And you're agreeing with the point, but then acting like as if you're arguing with me and still relying on polls that were less accurate. There's
no fucking methodology, but there's no scientific
doesn't matter
when it comes to fucking monkeys.
It doesn't matter if the results.
It does matter. It does matter because if you're relying on a fucking monkey, you have no idea if it's actually predicting or not, or if it's just random fucking chance. How do you know that there isn't 1,000 fucking monkeys out there, doing the same ritual or whatever?
What does that have to do with the fact that this particular monkey and these particular methods have been successfully predicting presidents?
It's the same thing as citing, prayer as a cancer cure.
Well, if prayer has a better track record than chemotherapy, and you have a choice between prayer and chemotherapy, you would ignore prayer and do the chemotherapy and take the lesser odds. Okay. You want to do it that way.
Here's the fact. Here's the actual fact.
Prayer
has no effect. In fact, in some cases,
you're the one who brought it up, man.
Effect.
I am not saying whether prayer has an effect or not.
You're the one who's bringing up pseudoscience as if it's science.
I'm not saying it is science. I'm saying the science that you quoted shouldn't be taken as credible if it can't accurately predict anything. This is argumentum ad absurdum.
They were precise.
If a monkey...
They were precise.
Who the fuck cares?
Very close, okay?
Why? Close doesn't... Okay, close in getting to the moon doesn't matter. Like, well, we were close, our methodology, but we missed the moon by a mile. That's pretty close. And then everybody's dead.
Do you know how far away the fucking moon is? If you miss the moon by a mile, you're pretty fucking close.
And you're still dead.
You still got pretty fucking close.
And you're still dead.
No, getting within a mile of the moon will be more accurate than any rifle on this fucking planet. Okay, let me analogize it with a gun. Okay, the 16-inch rifle on the Iowa class battleships can put a projectile within 100 feet of a target at 18 miles away. Okay, is that accurate?
That's pretty accurate. And if there was if somebody randomly firing without using this mechanism could get within 50 feet regularly, still go with the 100 feet thing? Yeah.
Your contention would be since it didn't even get with. Since
no,
it didn't
that
even
is not my contention.
Since it even touched that fucking target, you're saying, "Oh, that thing is inaccurate. Throw it away. Get the fucking pea shooter that that somehow luckily hits the same
retarded.
spot." Yeah, you're the one who's citing a fucking monkey.
Because it was more accurate than the method that you're talking about, which means okay.
Well, there is no methodology behind a monkey.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't fucking matter. I don't know what your hang up is. That's exactly the point. There is no methodology. No methodology was better than methodology in this instance.
No.
Yes.
You're relying on fucking magic. Okay.
Because it gets the results that you're looking for, which means that those polls are fucking worthless. If magic is better than polls, go with magic.
They were not worthless. God damn.
Oh God. Anyway,
they're worthless as far as results, man. Results are all that matters.
They were within 3%.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they didn't get the right results.
That's a nice tie you got there, HUMANe. Just be careful, Ham, if he was in your presence, would try to strangle you with
it. He probably chicken. I was probably some kind of clip-on.
No.
So I can hang him with it. Okay.
Yeah, but so if random chance is better than what you're using, then don't use what you're using. That's the point.
This poll data is not supposed to they are not supposed to say, okay, according to this data, this will be the president. No, it is predicting what the president will be.
Yeah, and
they were very accurate, within 3%. In fact,
dude,
they're so accurate. They were outside the margin. That Donald Trump literally only won by less than a percent.
All right, so
he won by
put your money where your mouth is. So okay, next presidential elections, I will bet on the monkey. You can bet on the poll data. Hey, it's easy money, right? Should be. $5. It's not gonna break your bank or anything. What, $5, right? Not a huge deal, but if you lose fair and square, right? Poll data versus the monkey.
I'm not even going to respect that fucking argument.
It should be an easy win for you. If the polls are so awesome and hey, good and like if you're citing on the saying this, the polls are credible and valid sources, you can't even put $5 on them? You're not even willing to risk $5 on those polls.
Yeah, because I don't gamble.
Ham would be. I'm pretty sure he'd be homeless if he did gamble.
All right, so yeah, because he doesn't go with what works, he goes with what makes sense. Look, when it comes to what works and what makes sense, you always go with what works, even if you don't understand it. That's even
and the poll data does work. Okay, it works within.
It works so well you're not even willing to risk $5
error.
on it. I gotcha. Yeah, it works so well you can't say, you know what, I'll lose $5 because I believe in what this so. Yeah. Works so well it's not worth risking $5. Dude, I actually think the monkey is likely to be inaccurate next, but I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll put $5 on it just for the chance to prove you wrong. Or just for the chance to be like, aha, the monkey won again and your polls were wrong. That would be kind of awesome. Although, yeah, that would, again, it's just fluke, random chance, which is entirely the point that I'm making. Fluke and random chance. Although I think that professor, that would be probably a more prudent, because if the monkey and the professor disagree, I think the more prudent use of money would be to bet on that professor's prediction. Because he's got a longer track record, and also there's logic behind what he's doing, so he's more likely to be incorrect. And when it's a choice between monkey, who's just randomly picking, and a guy who's actually put work into figuring it out and has a very good track record, I'd go with the guy who's actually doing it. And then if that guy happens to be wrong and then the monkey is right, well then the next year or next time around, go with the monkey. You go with what has a better result or a better track record of accuracy. That's seems like a pretty obvious point.
How do I predict the midterms going? I predict it'll go like how any midterms will go.
Historically speaking, I give a tilt to the Dems, but considering some of the candidates they run, Ham, I think that if they're able to fuck up and have Trump win, they're probably gonna fuck up and let the Republicans make, or keep their seats or even make gains if they fuck up that badly.
I cannot conceive. Wait, but yes, I can. I was going to say I cannot conceive of a situation where the Democrats would fuck up so badly that the Republicans will gain even more purchase in Congress. But then suddenly I thought, this is the Democratic Party I'm talking about.
Like the thing is, the Republicans, a lot have been retiring and resigning more so than 2006, and that was a horrible year for the Republican Party. But the Democrats, a lot of them are dividing. It's between the Hillary wing and the Bernie wing and whatnot. Which, and the Republicans, they do seem united, but they don't seem very excited. If anything, in all honesty, some of the races I imagine will be very close. And then there's some that will be like pretty decisive. Like in California, no Republican has been senator there for over 20 years.
That's depressing.
Well, I mean, this is what happens when you have things like the internet showing up. I mean, weird things start happening. The establishment can't, control the flow of information like they can anymore. I mean, with this recent thing with, every social media giant, unpersoning Alex Jones, that's frankly terrifying. because they can, and that means they literally can control the flow of information. Which is why, there's a growing movement, and I'm part of this movement of where these major social media companies need to be regulated like a utility.
HUMANe, didn't you say you were changing your mind, or at least rethinking your stance on net neutrality?
So, okay, I actually looked into that, and no, I maintain my original position that I am not in favor of net neutrality in any way, shape, or form. And even though I agreed with the sentiment of that
JPM,
JPM was talking about, the idea that because Google and them have such a large market share and it's almost indistinguishable from a public space, that in order to ensure free speech, they should be treated like a public utility. Like, I agree with that on those terms. But thinking about this kind of from a broader perspective and the possible ramifications of doing that, which that's putting more power into the government's hands, which the government is more likely to abuse such power rather than the private entities themselves. So
wait, how?
Because the government. Power corrupts absolute. Power corrupts absolutely. It's more likely that somebody would come into power, and rather than using that for, using that position of authority to make them more free,
how
they would make it less free.
How would net neutrality make room for abuse?
How would net neutrality make room for abuse?
Well, net neutrality is already abusive in its implementation. We're talking about whether Google, whether YouTube should be regulated and stuff like that.
How would it be corruptible?
No, net neutrality, I think, is corrupt from its very from the onset.
How?
Okay, so Dennis PragerU just released a video talking about net neutrality, and so the guy said people act as if the internet is being treated the same as a utility, but even a power company like your power company, they get to charge you more when you use more power. Even though everybody's on the grid, everybody gets charged a certain amount per kilowatt hour. If you use more than the people around you, they charge you more per kilowatt hour, and they're allowed to do this. But ISPs under net neutrality were not allowed to charge higher bandwidth users. They had to charge the same rate for everybody on the internet, even people who were using way more data than others. They had to charge the same price, which is
I don't think you understand the arguments in favor of net neutrality. The arguments in favor of net neutrality is so that ISPs don't throttle or just outright block certain websites.
I understand that, but have they ever?
Yes.
Okay. So have they been doing that since net neutrality was repealed?
They are prohibited by law to do so.
No, net neutrality was repealed. There's nothing stopping them from...
Well,
net
were
neutrality
prohibited.
Was repealed because net neutrality was enacted by the FCC. That was repealed.
I heard rumors of YouTube was being throttled by the ISPs for not paying their...
Yes.
So that's one example.
But that's because they're not paying for their bandwidth that they're using. If you don't pay your electricity bill, you can't be angry if they shut off your power. It's the same idea. They're using more of that particular service, and so the ISPs want to charge them based on their usage. So the answer, I think, so the problem that I've come to when I was thinking about this is the problem in both situations is that there is a limited number of ISPs, and you think, oh, the solution is to then have the government control what those ISPs can and can't do. There's a limited amount of social media platforms, so the government should limit what those social media platforms can do and can and can't do. And my solution is, no, we just need more competition. The government is not the answer. It's not the whether the government should get involved or whether the government should not get involved.
Your solution is not to solve the problem, but to continue the problem. That's the problem.
What?
If you have more competition, that'll be just more social media giants that will inevitably start having these very same problems.
How do you get to that conclusion?
That doesn't make any sense.
Because Twitter started out as a free speech platform.
Yes, and
look what it became.
Okay.
That will inevitably happen to every social media company that will emerge.
People were bitching about harassment and bullying and all that shit, and
yeah. So if there are 20 social media platforms that are out there, not one of them is going to continue to stand up for free speech. They're all going to fall in line and follow the same practices that Twitter has practiced.
They will. If there are 25
as
evidenced
YouTubes,
by every other social media platform.
If there are 25 YouTubes, they are all going to follow YouTube's lead. Not one of them is going to break
Are there 25 YouTubes?
What? If there were, he said if they were.
That's what I'm saying. The idea behind competition. What is the point of competition if everybody is doing the exact same thing? Why be a YouTube or why be Twitter? Like, why be number 25 out of all of the social media applications?
Let me give you another example why your competition idea will fail. Vid.me. Vid.me was a free speech, video sharing platform. It folded.
It was around for several years though. It did stand up its ground for a while.
Yeah, but it's still folded. YouTube is still around.
Because not enough people knew about that.
Video sharing websites like YouTube is a net loss. The only reason why Google can afford YouTube is because Google is Google.
Yeah.
Google is so fucking massive. It's a search engine.
Yes. YouTube is a net loss for Google. YouTube wouldn't survive on its own. And Google would make more money I scratched that. On paper, Google would make more money without YouTube. Conversely, Google actually makes more money in their other departments because of YouTube, because YouTube is their advertising arm. It allows Google to get more business in its other actual profitable endeavors.
In order to have a video sharing website, you would have to be a part of a much larger conglomeration of other websites.
No, you just need a distributed ledger that is fast enough to accommodate video streaming.
So you're talking about basically torrenting videos.
Yeah, if you want to think about it like that, yes. It's the same idea. It's secure peer-to-peer as opposed to torrents, which are non-secure peer-to-peer. But the idea remains, yes, it's peer-to-peer streaming. Okay,
there are sites like that, and I don't know if they're growing or not, but that's just one alternative.
Yes, which is what you get when there is competition. You get multiple alternatives, multiple solutions, and build a better mousetrap. You'll sell more mousetraps.
What percentage of the market share do they have?
Doesn't matter what percentage of the market share they have.
It does matter when a site like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, dominates the market, and they will continue dominating the market until people get off those websites.
They will continue to dominate the market until they continue to mistreat their users so much to the point that their users start looking for alternatives. And if there is no alternative, well, then they're stuck with YouTube. If there are alternatives that keep popping up, people will try them out, and maybe they'll like those alternatives more. Because Facebook itself disproves the point you're trying to make. Because prior to Facebook, MySpace was king of the hill. MySpace was number one. Facebook was a competitor that showed up when Friendster, MySpace, what's the other, There was like 5 or 6 different social media applications that were all vying for that number 1 spot. MySpace was in the lead. Facebook stole it from them. Facebook was like from
and Facebook has remained on top.
Dale, also, I'd like to bring up a point Darkon made. He says there are at least 3 YouTubes: YouTube itself, Dailymotion, and BitChute. Dailymotion's been up for a long while.
BitChute's the one that's basically peer-to-peer, right?
Yes.
Also,
it is torrent based.
Also, there's Vimeo, actually.
Vimeo. There's also Steemit. There is
Twitch.
What's the other one? Something Tube. What was it?
Dang
it.
I don't remember.
I can't remember. It was so I didn't like it because it's kind of sounded like a Me Too type. Like, see, I'm cool too. I've got Tube in my name, and you're like, dude, you're just copying what YouTube is doing. That's nothing unique or original. You're a poser. But so I like BitChute in general. I don't think they're gonna stick around for very long because I don't know how they can possibly be profitable given their business model. I do like the idea behind it, but I think it's fundamentally flawed. Same thing with Gab. Same thing with Minds. I think
so. All these alternative social media websites all have problems, mainly with how do they monetize.
Yeah.
Except the big ones that are currently dominating the market have no problem with monetization. Which are going to continue dominating the market?
Okay, so
Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, or is it Dailymotion, BitChute, and Gab, and Minds?
Well, I'm putting my money on Funfair because that's exactly what I'm trying to fix. But the argument you're making right now is Blockbuster can't possibly lose to an upstart because they've got all of the backing right now. So this Netflix thing is not going to work. You're also on the side of MySpace is where we need to put our money because there's no way Facebook can take that crown from them. There have been upsets in the history. This is the state of business in general. Is the companies that are on top right now are not going to be on top 50 years from now. The companies that were on top 50 years ago
let me explain to you why
that
Blockbuster and MySpace were bad ideas. Were bad analogies.
It's not important. The principle is the guys who are in charge and are dominating the market now are not the ones dominating it in the future.
Except here's a problem with your analogies. Once again, Blockbuster lost because of the internet. The internet is the thing that knocked Blockbuster off its high horse. Okay. MySpace was a glitchy ass site, slow to load.
Doesn't fucking matter.
Facebook was just a more convenient site to use.
Build a better mousetrap, people will buy more mousetraps from you. That's
except people have been buying the same style of mousetrap for 100 years.
Also,
no, they haven't been buying the same style of mousetrap for 100 years. Have you seen, dude, the mousetrap you're talking about, the little wooden block with a spring-loaded? Yeah, that people still buy those. You know what people buy instead, though? They buy these little containers where the mouse goes in to get some bit of peanut butter and then can't possibly escape. And then you can either release the mouse out into the wild, or you can smash his head and make sure he never comes back in your house or whatever. They have better mousetraps. People buy them. They also have these little tar traps that mice run into them and get stuck and can't get out.
Have they replaced the traditional spring trap? Have they replaced a traditional spring trap?
No,
virtually.
They still exist, but they're not very good. People buy the more effective ways that actually stop the problem. People can spend all their money on these crappy wooden ones that are more likely to snap at nothing, and then the mouse gets the whatever is on there without any kind of fear or risk. Or they get the ones that actually work.
The spring traps work.
No.
I've had those traditional spring traps in my house for years, and every week I had to clean them out because there's mouses everywhere.
Yeah. But
when we had mouses.
Yeah, I don't know why you use those. Those are
because they work.
No, they don't. They don't work because, like you said, you have to continually clean them out, and you keep finding mice.
Yeah, because they keep killing the mice. After a while, there's no mice because we
Then
killed
why
them
do you
all.
have to keep buying them? Like I bought one mousetrap, and it was this little it was this little tube thing.
We
Because
used
so
the
this is one
same
based on the
format,
one. So I saw
like-
my parents buy this, and it seemed pretty effective when they had a mouse problem. So it's this little tube, and it has a one-way trap door where the mice goes in, gets peanut butter at the end of it. It's a clear plastic container. They just pound their head in the back of it and can't get out. And when they go in to turn around, they're stuck. They're trapped. They can't escape. So they either die of starvation because they're trapped in there when I haven't checked it, or I go and just throw them out. And then I've never had mice problems ever since. So you're saying you have to keep buying mouse traps and keep cleaning them out. I mean, maybe this is anecdotal on my part, but I've only had one mouse problem in my house, and it was alleviated by this one trap.
For years. Okay, I do have to clean them out because there happens to be a dead fucking mouse. Just the same way you have with those tube things. You still have to clean them out because you got a fucking mouse in there.
Yeah, and then mice don't come back. There is not an infestation of them.
There was a minor infestation in my house, and then we didn't have one. I wonder why. Because we killed them all.
Anyway,
But
if Facebook continues to be dickheads and continue to censor people, a company that doesn't censor people will pick up business from them. And it doesn't matter if that other business doesn't become number one or become king of the hill. Facebook will lose market shares to a social media site that doesn't mistreat their customers. YouTube will lose market shares to a business that actually provides the same service, but without all the BS and without all the, and
what will prevent them from
opaque
from turning around and committing those same abuses?
Well, my system is designed with that in from the get-go.
Okay,
because I
don't
went
care
in with
about
the
your
idea
system.
that if I wanted to be a totalitarian dictator kicking people off at will, how would I build a system that stops myself from doing so? That's why I built my system the way it is, where it's distributed, where even though I built it, it's no longer under my control. I'm not the man pulling all the strings.
And once again, Twitter started off as a free speech platform.
Twitter started off as Twitter being in control of the platform with a commitment to free speech. But Jack is still in charge of it. Jack still has his hand on the control. But what I'm saying is my system is designed
any other
differently. Yes.
competitor is going to be any different.
My system is designed specifically where I am not in control of everything.
Bullshit.
No.
It
is designed based on Bitcoin, which Bitcoin has no central authority. It is based on similar principles. There is no central authority, so anybody can join, anybody can participate, and there is no one person controlling the market. The only way to gain control over a distributed ledger is you have to have at least, 34%? 34% all willingly participating in controlling the market. And that 34% only accounts if a part of that distributed ledger can be sectioned off from the rest. So when you're talking about Bitcoin is technically 51%. It would take 51% of the users on Bitcoin to all be colluding with each other in order to trick people or in order to control that particular system. The reason it goes down to 34% is because China can firewall specific users and split the network in two, and then 34% of the market can control the remaining 2/3, in which case they've got the majority over 1/3 of the network, and then when the network combines together, those 2/3 override the 1/3 that just recently joined back in, and then you've got the collusion and corruption of the system. But you're talking about millions of people acting in unison, and the cost of time and energy in order to facilitate this kind of this type of override of the system security is not even worth it. It's like a heist movie setting up Ocean's 11, getting all these people together, paying them each $1 million to go rob a bank and get $150,000 back. That's the equivalent of what it would take to crack the Bitcoin system, because that's the efficiency of distributed ledgers. So my system is built on a distributed ledger that has that same kind of security, where it's like, yeah, as long as 34% of the market doesn't all operate as one in collusion, the system is secure and there is no one central group or person controlling it. These are...
But how likely is it to gain any kind of market share? I mean,
given social media's current performance, very likely. And in order for my platform to be successful, I don't even need 1%. I don't even need 0.1%. I need 10,000 users. 10,000 users, and that is enough to make my platform stable. And as long as I can maintain 10,000 active users on a system, and that's nothing considering, 50-something million people on PewDiePie alone's channel? Hundreds of millions of people on YouTube, and I need 10,000. I think that is achievable.
I mean, is this unreliant on monetization? Can it survive
No,
without...
monetization is built into it.
How? How?
I've got a full video talking about it. I've got an entire website talking about how it works.
What is it, like a subscription-based thing?
If the users want to subscribe, yes. So I've got various ways of funding this. So I've got affiliate links, I've got advertising opportunities, I've got monetary compensation, subscriptions. People can sign up for subscriptions. Funfair does take a percentage of all deposits into the system well, I guess I got to specify this because BTK showed me that I was thinking about this incorrectly. The system takes out a percentage of all the withdrawals from the system. So if you leave it in the system, there's no penalty, and Funfair doesn't make any money. But when you go to withdraw money, we take a portion of that, and that funds the project as a whole. And if you've got money sitting in your bank and you need to pay your rent, and if somebody is donating to you, similar to Patreon, it doesn't make any sense for you to leave that in there just to avoid a small fee. And this small fee, to start off with, is not going to be any more than 4%, and I hope to get that down to as little as 0.5%. Because I think if I can get up to the 100,000 user range, I can operate at cost. That means, our fees for Funfair are going to be so minimal per user you won't even notice it. If I'm taking out a fraction of a cent for every transaction, it's going to look like you're getting the full amount, like you don't even notice Funfair's portion of it. So the other thing is advertising opportunities. There's also merchandising. There's a bunch of ways to facilitate the funding of this particular project, but the primary way it's built is it is a payment gateway similar to this is in my fucking video, dude. This word for word.
I mean,
it's a payment gateway similar to PayPal. So as long as you're on there, and there are people sending funds, which is the active user part of this, there are people sending funds from one person to another. Okay. 10,000 users is all it would require to maintain this application.
So, yeah, this is all nice talk, but it doesn't address the reality of the situation that Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they are currently the market leaders, and they have been for years.
Yeah, and as long as they continue to abuse their users, they will not remain at the top for long.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Because from what I've seen, every alternative to these websites have either failed or they've remained in obscurity.
Well, I mean, then it's on those people to promote it like if you get fucked or anything. Also,
So it doesn't. It still doesn't solve the problem of censorship from these platforms. It doesn't solve the problem.
It doesn't
of
need to solve
censorship.
that problem. The problem is making sure that there is a platform for people to express their freedom of speech, as long as that exists.
And as someone like Alex Jones just got unpersoned. He got deleted from every social media website.
Yeah.
Millions of
people. And if there was a competitor.
If you're
Stop
all
being
about
autistic. Stop being autistic. Anyway,
the solution is to expand free speech protections to include these social media websites.
Oh my fucking god.
Yeah, that's because your solution is everything is a nail, hit it with a hammer.
Well, if it's a nail, use a hammer. If it's a screw, use a screwdriver. If it's a bolt, use a wrench.
Holy shit! It's like you don't even understand that analogy. Oh man.
Yeah, because you're the one you are the one who sees everything as a nail, and you use everything, and you use a nail, and you use a hammer. All right.
Each only applies to the state.
There are some. I'm actually capable of seeing that some things are screws, some things are bolts, and some things are nails, and I use the proper tools.
Yeah,
all right.
No, I think the only tool around here is you, but
well, when it comes to whoever makes my video game, whoever builds my car, I want a private company to make it because they tend to make the best products. Well, when it comes to healthcare or protecting my rights, I want the government to do that because they have a vested interest in protecting my rights. And they don't have a profit motive that would lead to worse health care.
Yeah. So so I'm reading the comment there by S-Man. People bitching about what users posted caused Twitter to abandon free speech.
Well, I mean, is that not true, though? Because a lot of people were demanding something be done, and Twitter did something.
There's two folds to this. So first,
customers... This is why we need to expand the free speech protection so that the users can't, browbeat the people in charge to ban certain users over something offensive they said.
So
when it comes to constitutional rights, there is no arguing against that.
There are no constitutional rights.
There's no constitutional rights on
the Bill of Rights does not exist.
No, the Bill of Rights does not create rights. The Bill of Rights prevents the government from eroding your unalienable or inalienable rights. Those rights exist outside of the Constitution. The Constitution does not establish those rights.
Yeah.
They do. They do establish them. What the fuck are you talking about?
All right, that's a whole nother conversation, but I'm getting tired. Like I said, when we started the stream, I have been up since 2 o'clock in the morning, so it is past my bedtime.
All right. It's probably a good time to end it anyway, but Ham might just have to disagree.
I disagree with you, Ham. I think competition and free market solutions will always be the better alternative when solving a problem because it's not one hammer like you were trying to allude to. It is multiple people trying multiple tools to figure out which one of those tools will best fit the situation. And you say applying government to one situation.
Yeah, you're the one. You say free market. That's the hammer. I say government. That's a screwdriver.
Free market is not the hammer. Government is the hammer.
You're the fucking hammer.
Free market is a multi-tool to figure out which one of those multi-tools is going to
best... And so is the government.
No. The government has one thing. It only does one thing. Force. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't have anything else.
What does a free market fucking do?
Whatever it wants to. Or whatever is... Or more, I guess, more correctly, whatever is most efficient.
Obviously not, because with the free market, we're still stuck with ISPs.
We don't have it.
With
whatever.
the free market, we're still stuck with ISPs that charges out the wazoo
have you ever
for
heard
some
of
of
the
the worst
term
service in
meta,
America,
right?
in the world.
You've heard of the term meta, right? When it comes to gaming, most effective tactic available. Now, your claim is that the free market is not efficient because it is not as efficient as physically possible, rather than it's not as efficient as it can currently be. It's the most effective tactic available, right? It's the, hey, we've got this much efficiency that we can do right now. It's not
every time
perfect.
we've ever talked about universal health care.
It's not perfect, but it is the most efficient that we currently have. And as we improve our understanding of a situation, or as people come up with other alternatives or other ways of doing things, guess what? That becomes the most efficient tactic available. That becomes the most efficient we currently have. We are constantly progressing towards the most efficient. It is a... what's that called? Oh, dang. It's not a parabola. I said that last time, but it's not a parabola. There's a different name for it. It's a geometric term. And it's a line that goes incredibly closer towards infinity, but never quite touches it. And that's what the free market
longitude?
Should we just wrap this up right here before we continue any further?
I want to make this point real fucking clear.
Going towards perfection, but it will never quite reach that because every time it gets close, perfection moves a little bit further away because of technological advancements and stuff like that.
I want to point this out right now. You do not believe in the most efficient tactic available because each time I brought up single-payer healthcare, you completely disagree with it.
Because I disagree with the data that you cite on that. You keep claiming it is the most efficient tactic, or the most effective tactic available, but it's not. It's not by metrics across the board. When you're talking about wait times and deaths and the expenses.
It is the most effective tactic available.
Okay, this is going to turn into the whole single-payer healthcare debate. Let's just.
We've already done that way too many times, and I'm sick of these streams being centered around that stupid idea that has been so disproved. There's no.
Wrong. Oh my god, you're so fucking wrong.
Okay,
anyway, this is my stream. You can say whatever you want on your stream. You can keep telling universal.
Yeah. You can make your own video when you get the fucking webcam. Anyway, it's
the number one issue among Americans right now, healthcare.
Anyway, I'm not going to disagree with that, but whatever.
So
about
what if
the
it
issue.
is? It doesn't mean it's the number one healthcare or it's the number one issue among Americans. Therefore, you're correct. That doesn't make you correct. It just means it's a big issue. Okay.
Yeah. So let's head to a close, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Okay. So before I wrap this up, I do want to. So there's a couple of points that I tried to hammer home. So we're talking about credibility. There's reputation is a huge part of this. We kind of circled around this. I didn't actually state it emphatically, but this is what I'm summarizing it, and that's what I was talking about because I was talking about the anonymous sources. They don't have the reputation to back up the claims being made. So reputation is a huge one. And this also goes to what we were talking about with the polling data and with those other random chance predictions.
A monkey!
Yeah. I know, it's absurd. It's almost like that was my entire point to point out how absurd it was that these were accurate and those weren't. The reputation of something does matter, and if something doesn't have a consistent reputation of being correct, you can't rely on it as an accurate source. You can't use that as your support for your argument, because when it comes to polling, you might have a better chance of flipping a coin. At least from what I can tell, it's like your odds of it being correct and accurate is about
3% margin of error is not flipping a coin.
Yeah, whatever you say. Anyway. So reputation is huge when figuring out if something is credible or not. If something has a good track record of being correct, it's more likely to be correct in the future. If something has a spotty track record of being correct, well, it's more likely to have a spotty track record in the future. Which is why it goes to reputation of an individual. It matters who the individual is who is making a claim in this regard, if their identity is tied to why their word should be taken as valid. So these anonymous sources that are often being cited that are making extraordinary claims, without evidence, in order to even give that claim any consideration, you have to know whether that is a reputable source, whether that source has a good reputation of being accurate and being honest. Otherwise, they could be going in there and lying and hiding behind anonymity, and you don't know if this is a valid, reliable source or not, and they have no evidence to back up or support their claims. So you should treat that claim with the same amount of regard as you would, I guess, anything that Ham says, because he's 50% of the time right, and 50% of the time he's wrong. He might as well be a monkey picking a president. From my perspective, Ham can disagree with me, but
that's a hell of a lot better being wrong 100% of the time.
Okay, so Ham thinks I am wrong 100% of the time. So I guess the times where we have agreed, that's when we've both been wrong. Anyway.
So anything else you got to say?
So the other point. So in addition to reputation, there's also objective evidence. Physical evidence trumps reputation. Not trumps as in Trump the president, but it overcomes reputation. Reputation can only take you so far, but if you have a very good reputation of being correct, but the facts are against you, and facts win over reputation. So that's one thing that we've consistently seen with these the false reports and all that sort of thing is news sources and people with very good reputations have been caught in lies because what they were saying contradicted what was the facts at hand. So the facts trump reputation, but both of those things in tandem can help you determine what is a credible source or not. And the last part that I wanted to say is the consensus, which kind of goes along with reputation, is if one source does not have a significant amount of reputation and there's not enough evidence to make a claim contradicting something that is being...
67.
What?
That's Ham's roommate.
Oh, yeah, so if there is a consensus and there's no evidence contradicting that consensus, and the reputations of all the people in the consensus are about equal, then it makes sense that the consensus is more than likely correct. That should be your last line of defense when determining if something is credible or not. So the order of importance for credibility, at least from what I was thinking about before doing the stream, the truth being evidence, objective facts, things that are not up for dispute, things that are verifiable and all that sort of thing, those are number one when determining credibility. If somebody's using those for their argument or for their position, it's a very credible one. Reputation, if somebody has this is number two, is the reputation. If somebody has a good reputation, more likely that they are correct than not. If there is a consensus behind someone, then they're more likely to be accurate and truth than not. So those are the order of importance. Consensus doesn't trump facts. Consensus doesn't trump reputation. Reputation doesn't trump facts. Facts are at the top.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, thank you, HUMANe, for joining. Thank you for Ham for joining as well.
And causing a dumpster fire.
And the last thing I wanted to say is, according to my anonymous source, Trump, during his meetings, will randomly unzip his pants and helicopter in everybody's face. That's what my hey, this is a very credible source, wishes to remain anonymous, and I know this for a fact that Trump does this at every meeting.
Holy shit! If Donald Trump actually seriously did that, I would vote for him in a heartbeat because that is awesome.
My anonymous source says that this is 100% true.
Oh my fucking god!
Morgan Freeman says 2 out of 3 times he's correct 2 out of 3 times.
And my anonymous source says you motherfuckers are secretly gay for each other. Anyway, so thanks for everyone for joining.
Are we back at an annoy cuddling stage, or are we just still stuck at hate fucking?
You guys are probably doing a mix of both anyway.
I
you guys
think that you are a waste of my time and energy. Anyway,
we're at the hate fucking stage still.
Alright, I'm gonna end the stream here. Thanks for joining me. Sorry this one went really long, but you know that's what happens.
Ham join.
That's what seems to happen when Ham joins, and there's a bit of a back and forth, and I get lost in the weeds. Anyway.
Yeah, they're gonna cuddle after the stream, y'all.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, and at least I'm happy that I got a chance to talk about Funfair and the ideas behind it, but I don't do that enough. Anyway, thanks, and I will stop the stream now.
Chill.